Chapter 410. No matter what the reason was. Just by looking at Kotomi's delicate appearance, Di-Shir-Tian could not watch her die under the claws of the demon god and remain indifferent. Forget it! Forget it! Sakura secretly sighed twice in his heart. Even if the Qin family had really schemed against him, he had also obtained boundless benefit. This time, I'll just take it as doing my part for the demon race in the world. If the devil god breaks out of the seal, my demon race will definitely not be spared. The southern barbarian isn't far from here. The Myriad Demon Valley might be the first to bear the brunt and be harmed by the demons. When Qin Wuyo heard Di-Shirtian's words, he could not help but look at him with a trace of praise. A light flashed in his hand, and a wooden sculpture that was dozens of feet tall fell down with a loud bang. It stood in front of him. This wooden sculpture was completely black, and every hair on it was incomparably clear. A domineering and awe-inspiring black tiger proudly raised its head and roared at the sky as if it was competing with the heavens for supremacy. It was as if it was real and alive. This was made by my Qin family from the heart of 10,000-year-old iron wood. It is engraved with the 8 trigrams heavenly melody demon subduing formation. As long as you inject the power of wish in your body into your divine sculpture, it will activate the formation inside. With the power of wish as the source, it will produce a mysterious connection with the demon subduing formation in front of you, and the power of wish can be applied to the seal. Seal the demon god. Qin Wuyo pointed at the sculpture in front of him with a solemn expression. Whether it succeeds or not will depend on the will of the heavens. There's no time to lose. Let's begin now. Okay, Di-Shir-Tian shouted. His body soared into the air and landed on the back of the wooden sculpture. Waves of milky white power of wish poured into the sculpture like a tide. Roar! 2 divine lights shot out from the 2 pitch-black eyes of the sculpture, and its entire body emitted waves of dense pressure. It was awe-inspiring, and it actually soared into the air, roaring and rushing toward the 8 trigrams in midair. Countless divine lights shot out from its body and shone on the dense demon chi in the surroundings. Suddenly, it was like water and fire colliding, emitting intense sizzling sounds. Large amounts of devil chi melted under the divine light, or it could be said that they were annihilated at the same time. However, the power of will was endless, and even the demonic chi was suppressed in an instant. He flew up into the air and appeared in the middle of the 8 trigrams. Below him was Kotomi. Di-Shir-Tian shouted, "Kotomi, move aside. Let me do it." "Shir-Tian, you have to be careful. The suppressing devil god is extremely powerful. His true body is still being suppressed in the lake. Just the devil chi he emits and the devil generals under him also possess terrifying strength." In fact, Kotomi had already seen Di-Shir-Tian when he arrived. However, because she had to rely on the power of the Lu Qichin to support the seal, she couldn't separate herself. However, the joy in her heart was unknown to outsiders. That year, in order to see him, she was even willing to agree to the request of being grounded for 100 years. Unfortunately, in the secret territory, although they met each other, they didn't even speak a word. This regret had always been buried deep in his heart. Indra nodded in a heavy voice. Upon seeing Qin leaving, the amount of willpower he channeled into the statue grew even denser. Boundless divine light shot out in all directions, breaking through the shroud of devil chi. It was like the sun rising in the morning, unceasingly dispersing the darkness. With a bang, the sculpture landed in the middle of the 8 trigrams. Awo! 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 An earth-shaking tiger's roar came from the sculpture. Countless amounts of willpower poured into the 8 trigrams diagram below like a tide. Immediately, the divine light emitted from the 8 trigrams diagram suddenly became incomparably intense, becoming unprecedentedly strong. It landed on the boundless demonic chi, forcing the aggressive demonic chi to rapidly retreat on the spot. Bursts of demonic subduing sounds came from the 8 demon sealing pillars. Under the influence of the demonic subduing notes, a large number of devils suddenly became incomparably frenzied. Their demonic notes carried a kind of fear, as if doomsday was coming. Countless sound waves turned into thousands of sound blades, carrying the power of demonic subduing. They danced in the air, and the devils cut by these sound blades were annihilated into wisps of smoke. Rumble! The divine light on the demon's ceiling pillars shone brightly. Under the influence of this incomparably huge amount of power of will, the cracks on the bronze pillars that were constantly showing cracks suddenly stopped spreading. Looking at the shape, it was actually showing signs of healing. Endless power of will poured into the sculpture. Tian could clearly feel that in an instant, this totem sculpture and this 8 trigrams demon subduing note formation were completely connected. Countless divine lights shone together. They weaved together into the strongest seal between heaven and earth. The demonic chi that rushed out of the lake was firmly sealed in the formation, unable to leak out the slightest bit. Suppress! 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 Tian stepped on the totem sculpture with a solemn expression. He spat out the word suppress 3 times in a row. With each word, an incomparably huge amount of power of will poured into the sculpture. With a stomp of his foot, it was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on the sculpture, pressing it straight down. The sculpture pressed down on the 8 trigrams diagram and crashed down with a loud bang. One of the 8 demon ceiling pillars around it also sank back into the ground. After the 3 words suppress were uttered, the earth shook and the mountains shook. The demon ceiling pillars sank into the ground, and the 8 trigrams diagram appeared directly on the surface of the lake. Endless demonic chi was forcibly suppressed into the lake. Tian's totem sculpture directly stepped on the lake, as if it was growing on the surface of the lake. Countless divine lights intertwined. They weaved into a huge net that covered the entire demon subduing lake. Rumble! Countless waves surged in the lake, roaring continuously, wanting to crash into each other. However, they were inexplicably bound. With Tian's boundless power of will as the core source of the 8 trigrams demon subduing formation, providing endless power. For a moment, the power of the seal was actually unleashed to the extreme. However, no one noticed that in the crack of the demon ceiling pillar, a strange black light suddenly passed through the seal silently and floated toward Tian. It strangely rushed into his body from the bottom of his feet. Why do I feel a cold sensation? Suddenly, Tian felt a trace of coldness rise in his body. This coldness did not come from his body, but from his mind. However, this strange coldness only flashed and then disappeared, as if it was just a momentary illusion. It was sealed so easily. Qin Huio looked at the totem sculpture standing on the lake with some surprise. He watched as a huge amount of power of will flowed in the sculpture and poured into various parts of the formation to seal the demon god. He was a little surprised. He did not expect that the demon god would be sealed so easily. This result seemed to have come a little too smoothly. Instead, it made him feel a little suspicious. Looking around, the many elders of the Qin family sat cross-legged and began to recover their powers. Tian. Katomi stood in front of Tian with her zither in her arms. Her face was full of surprise and joy. She opened her mouth and spat out 2 words. She seemed to have thousands of words in her heart, but at this moment she could not say anything. Only the most ordinary greeting was left on the tip of her tongue. You, how have you been all these years? Her clear eyes fell on his face. Good. After a moment of silence, Tian suddenly felt that he did not know how to answer. Can you accompany me to the purple bamboo forest for a walk? Katomi looked at him expectantly. There was a trace of nervousness in her expression. All this time, she did not know that the words she said when she used the 1,000 days drunk to knock out Tian had already fallen into his ears. As you wish, I dare not ask you. Tian nodded slightly and agreed. Running away had never been his character. Since he had to face it in the end, he would not avoid it, just like when he faced Qin. Even if he did something wrong, he would do what he had to do. As a man, he should be like this. He took the lead and walked towards the purple bamboo forest. Qin Huo saw this from behind and could only shake her head slightly. She was silent and looked up at the sky. There seemed to be a trace of nostalgia in her eyes. A trace of memories. In the purple bamboo forest, the two stayed for about 4 to 6 hours before they came out. After leaving, Di Shitian went straight back to the imperial capital of China. In the imperial capital, he ordered Hua Wenwu to start a war with the surrounding countries. Expand the territory. His mind was also pulled away from the totem statue, and he returned to his body through the mysterious connection in the dark. This time, when he suppressed the demon god, his statue that stood on the lake had condensed almost half of his wish power in the past 10 years. It was incomparably huge, and there was also a continuous flow of other wish power that was continuously poured in. He wanted to be continuous for a long time. The price he had to pay was not small. Swoosh! His demon consciousness returned to his body, but it did not enter the third-grade Black Lotus in the demon mansion. Instead, it directly entered the 19 layers of the underworld prison in the divine eye of heavenly punishment. It condensed in the underworld prison and roared, "Dark, hurry up and come out. The demon god has entered my divine consciousness and followed me into my body. He wants to possess me." Possess? Lunatic D, who dares to possess you? Dark, who was in the underworld prison using all kinds of punishments on the ancient giant's avatar, immediately let out a strange roar when he heard Di Shitian's shout, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. 2 large dragon eyes swept forward and instantly fell on the trace of black gas that was repelled from Di Shitian's body. This is demon chi. This is the demon chi of the demon realm. Where did you come from? Dark let out a furious roar. He stared at the trace of demon chi. TSK. What a clever little demon. You actually discovered this demon god's existence and guessed that this demon god wanted to possess you. You should have sensed it when you were in the demon-subduing lake. You can endure until now to make trouble. This willpower is impressive, but it's too late now. Since this demon god has entered your body, you should obediently give your body to me. Caw, caw, caw. The trace of demon chi suddenly burst out with countless black lights. With a rumble, an incomparably terrifying demon god's pressure surged in all directions. The entire underworld prison shook violently under this terrifying pressure. It was as if it would collapse at any time. Waves of demon chi rapidly expanded and condensed into a terrifying demon god's body. Its body was a few 100 feet tall, and its body was like a giant. It had 4 pairs of demon arms and 8 demon hands. Behind it, there was a terrifying pitch-black scorpion tail that was connected by sections. On its forehead, there was a blood-colored mark that looked like a sickle. Its eyes were incomparably deep and contained an endless demonic nature. It was a kind of naked evil. It had a bloodthirsty glow. Even the hair on its head was blood-colored. Every strand of hair was like a soul, and there was a soul with a painful and twisted expression. The blood strands were slender and hung down to its waist. As they danced, they looked like a blood-colored waterfall. In the waterfall, there were countless vengeful souls with ferocious expressions. They seemed to be moaning in pain. Looking at the blood, there were countless of them. It was terrifying. A pair of huge demon eyes stared at Di Shitian and Dark. It seemed to have smelled something delicious, and could not help but lick its lip. It wanted to swallow them in one gulp. When we were in the Guqin Valley, I found it strange. No matter how powerful the power of will was, how could a demon god that could not be completely destroyed by time be sealed so easily? It was too smooth, so smooth that it was a little unnatural. At that time, I felt an inexplicable chill in my heart. At first, I thought it was just an illusion, but after thinking about it carefully, I felt that something was wrong. Sakra's eyes revealed a trace of indifference, My state of mind has always been as pure as one. Ever since I cultivated the book of Huangji shocking the world, it's hard for external evil to invade me. Under normal circumstances, it's impossible for me to have such feelings. Only you, a demon god, have the terrifying ability to invade my heart. You want to use me to bring you out of the seal and then take over my body. That way you can escape without a hitch. Ga, that's right, but so what if you know? You can't escape the fate of being devoured by me. The demon god did not care and let out 2 strange cries. The demon chi emitted from his body became stronger. No, you are the great demon god of the demon world. The blood-colored sickle mark, the scorpion tail god slaying thorn, and the blood god silk. You are the great demon god of the ancient times who killed countless people, the blood demon god. Ever since Ming saw the figure of the demon god, he had been thinking hard. He seemed to be trying to recall who the person in front of him was. Suddenly, he could not help but cry out in shock. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Aren't you suppressed by the 8 trigrams heavenly melody demon subduing formation? After so many years, even the demon subduing formation could not destroy your demon soul. Ga, I did not expect a little worm like you to remember the great demon god's unparalleled demonic power. Back then, your master, the Emperor of the Dead, was defeated by me. Today you think you can stop me? The blood demon god laughed strangely. His demon eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty light. He did not attack immediately. It was as if he was gathering demon chi to recover his fighting strength. Lunatic D, quick, quick, quick! Let's combine our hands to suppress him. He is only a demon soul now. He is extremely weak, and only has the ability of the immortal realm. Suppress him. We can't let him recover. Otherwise, you and I will be devoured by him. Ming roared loudly. Blood light flickered in his dragon eyes. With a crazed expression, he waved his dragon claws at the blood demon god. Underworld sky cage. Countless blood-red lights flashed, and a blood-red cage appeared around the demonic god, trapping him in it. Countless blood-red chains danced in the air, trying to bind the demonic god. Swoosh, swoosh. They tied the demonic god up tightly. He looked like a blood-red dumpling. Even your master, the Emperor of the Dead, does not have the ability to trap me. Roar. The blood demon god let out a demonic roar. Terrifying demon chi burst out from his body and landed on the cage and chains. The demon chi corroded the cage at a speed visible to the naked eye. The blood-red cage was covered by pitch-black demon inscriptions in the blink of an eye. It turned into a demon prison. With a crack, the chains wrapped around the demon god's body broke. Roar. Demon chi surged. A demon claw slapped the cage. With a boom, the sturdy cage was smashed into pieces. The demon god opened his mouth and sucked. A gust of demon chi rolled up from the ground. In the 19 nether prisons, the souls in the first level flew into the air. They were involuntarily sucked into the demon god's mouth by a terrifying force. He swallowed thousands of soul essences of savage beasts in one gulp. Roar. After swallowing the soul essences, the demon god's demon chi became even more terrifying. Endless demon chi rolled out, and the bloodthirsty light made people shudder. So what if you are a demon god? How dare you be so arrogant in my nether prison? I don't care if you are a demon god or not. In my territory, I can suppress you whenever I want. When Di Shirtian saw the blood demon god open his mouth and swallow the souls in the nether prison, he was furious. His heart was cold as he roared, "Divine light of heavenly punishment!" Amidst the angry roar, a beam of divine light appeared in the sky above the infernal purgatory. With a supreme power, it fell instantly and covered the body of the demon god. The mighty power emanating from the divine light suppressed the demon god's arrogance. It suppressed the demon god's strength from the immortal realm to the tribulation realm. This was the suppression from the divine eye of heavenly punishment and the nether prison on the demon god. Lunatic D, well done. You must suppress him. Most of my power is used to suppress the clone on the Heaven's Punishment platform. I can't spare much power now. Zyok Sintai's scorpion tail and demonic hair can turn an immortal into a pool of blood if he is pierced by the scorpion tail. His essence will be devoured by the demon god. He will also become one of the blood threads on his body. Nether kept roaring. Obviously, he was very clear about the great demon god's means and kept reminding him. Tiger soul. He roared and summoned the tiger soul. Clang. The tiger soul, which D. Shirtion had been carrying on his back, let out a long cry and flew out of the scabbard. It flew in the air, as if it had a mind of its own, and appeared in front of his forehead. It pierced the purple mark between his eyebrows at lightning speed. The entire tiger soul directly pierced between his eyebrows and disappeared. Shao Qin looked at the black pearl that connected tiger soul's hilt and saber body. It gave off a strange, black light. Big sister, look. Why did D. Shirtion suddenly unsheath his scabbard and pierce between his eyebrows? Is he trying to commit suicide? The sudden sound of the scabbard being unsheathed immediately woke up the 3 dragon ladies who were still in the quiet room. The second princess, Ao Hong, shouted in surprise. This was a change that no one had expected. No, something seems to have happened to him. Ao Hong shook her head. A look of surprise flashed in her eyes. She carefully observed the purple mark between his eyebrows, and a layer of mysterious light appeared in her eyes. It flickered continuously and disappeared after a while. She shouted with interest, "This purple mark is strange. The talented demons all have their own special abilities. There seems to be an independent space inside the purple mark. Something happened inside. Haha, I like it. Big sister, take out your empty nether mirror and bring us in. We can see what D. Shirtion is up to." Ao Hong's eyes lit up. She sensed that something interesting was going to happen. She kept shouting. "I went out to drink with my friends today and came back a little late. My mind is a little muddled. I only have 1 chapter, please forgive me." Chapter 411. Interesting. I thought that there was no more fun. I didn't know that there was such an interesting thing. There's actually an independent space in my innate skill. If I hadn't won a bottle of Moonlight Essence of Delusion from my uncle, the Dragon King of the East Sea, I wouldn't have been able to see through it by touching it on my eyes and connecting it 49 times to cultivate this pair of divine eyes of delusion. However, I felt a kind of pressure from the purple mark that seemed to come from the soul, and I couldn't see through it. I only knew that it was an eye, a purple divine eye. Ao Qing, who had always been a gambler, would bet on all sorts of strange things. Although she did not care about the size of the bet or what it was, she was willing to bet even if it was a brick. What she enjoyed was the process of gambling. To her, it was a kind of enjoyment, a kind of fun. However, she couldn't really collect some ordinary bricks and stones. Therefore, she went to the East Sea to win a bottle of the East Sea Dragon Palace's treasure for countless years, the Moonlight Essence of Delusion. Legend had it that the Moonlight Essence of Delusion was created by a mortal lord of delusion in ancient times with a unique method. He collected moonlight from the moon in the moon, the spring of delusion from the underworld, the heavenly river from the 9 heavens, the star dew from the stars, the underworld water from the netherworld, and so on. It took him 1,000 years to make 3 bottles of the Moonlight Essence of Delusion. If he put it on his eyes for 49 days, he would have the divine eye of delusion. The godly eye of delusion was not simple. It was as powerful as Sun Wukong's fiery crystal eyes. It could see through demons, ghosts, and cultivators 3 levels higher than oneself. It could also identify the quality of all kinds of treasures. Whether a magic treasure was good or bad, or its grade, nothing could hide from the godly eye of delusion. It could also see through illusions and point to the truth. All illusions could be seen through by this pair of eyes. It was very magical. The 3 bottles of moonlight essence of delusion were very precious. The godly lord of delusion had used one of them himself, and the other 2 bottles had gone missing. He didn't expect Ao Qing to get one of them. She had won a lot of treasures with this pair of divine eyes and gambling skills. They were all in the Qianquan bag at her waist. Hurry up, big sister. Let's go in and take a look. There must be something fun going on. We must not miss this opportunity. It would be great if we could fight. Ao Hong's eyes were filled with excitement. Yanran was indeed a dragon girl who liked to fight. All right. A hint of interest flashed across Ao Qing's face. She swiped her Qianquan bag, and a simple and unadorned ancient mirror appeared in her hand. There were strange patterns on the ancient mirror that were distributed all around, outlining traces of an ancient aura. Void, illusory, traversing the heavens. Your Majesty! With a shout, she quickly formed a seal and placed it on the ancient mirror. A mysterious yellow light flashed on the ancient mirror and shot out. The light shone on Ao Qing and the other 2 women, and the 3 women strangely disappeared. At the same time, a ray of light fell on the purple mark on Di Shirtian's forehead. Wow! Where is this place? It's so creepy. It's really fun. There's really a space. Look, that's Di Shirtian. There's a dragon. Why is there a blood dragon? I feel so oppressed from it. Big sister, what is that? It's demonic energy. It's a demon lord. Di Shirtian, do you need our help? With the power of the void mirror, the 3 dragon girls really crossed the boundary of time and space, entered Di Shirtian's eye of heaven punishment, and entered the infernal prison. As soon as they entered, they were shocked by the scene in front of them. They couldn't help but look at the scene in front of them in horror. It took a long time to describe, but in fact, it happened in the blink of an eye. When the 3 dragon girls entered, Di Shirtian had just held Tiger Soul in his hand. He coldly looked at the bloodied demon god, and the blade of Tiger Soul was slanted to his side. The dark green bead at the end of the blade flashed with faint light from time to time, emitting an evil aura. What are you doing here? Leave quickly. When Di Shirtian saw that Ao Qing and the others had come here, he couldn't help but feel angry. Do you really think this is a fun place? If you're not careful, you can lose your life in this dangerous place. The ignorant are truly fearless. Roar! The demon god roared, his demonic aura overwhelming the world. His 2 demon eyes were unusually ferocious, as if he was looking at an ant. Di Shirtian, right? Be obedient and let me devour you. We will become one. At that time, you will know how wonderful it is. Come! In the midst of his roar, one of the devil arms on his body swayed and stretched out a pitch-black devil claw, grabbing towards Sakura. Looking at the size of the claw, it seemed like it could completely seize him with one grab and easily crush him to death, just like crushing an ant. Under the claw, the space under the claw suddenly froze, as if it was about to solidify. Ha ha ha! Di Shirtian laughed wildly. His laughter shook the entire nether prison. His black hair fluttered madly behind his head without any wind. He held Tiger Soul horizontally and pointed the blade at the demon god. His body burst with an indomitable and valiant aura like that of a supreme being. His expression was cold. Since I, Di Shirtian, dared to bring you back into my body, I have never been afraid of you. No matter how powerful your true body is, you are just a wisp of demon soul here. So what if I kill you? Looking at the demon claw in front of him, his courage surged, and his heart went crazy. Fight, fight, fight! If he wanted to fight, he would fight to his heart's content. Only then would he not let down this man's heart. He would not let the man's body bind the woman's heart. Slash! Facing the demon claw that seemed to be able to pinch heaven and earth, Di Shirtian did not dodge at all. Instead, he advanced and stomped his foot forward. If he did not retreat, he would not retreat even if he died. If he retreated, he would be cowering, and if he retreated, he would be weak. Sabers were domineering. Only by advancing and not retreating could he truly unleash the true essence and power of the saber. He continued to practice his saber. Every time he had time, he would swing his saber and slash. He already had a deep understanding of the true essence of the saber. When he took a step forward, the infinite power contained in his body also began to roar and surge into Tiger's soul. The saber slashed straight at the demon claw. In an instant, a beautiful saber mark broke through the air and landed on the demon claw. Bang! Tiger's soul and the demon claw collided without any concealment. Even if the demon god was suppressed by the heavenly punishment divine light above and forcibly suppressed the tribulation, the demon aura on his body was so strong that even when it collided with Tiger's soul, it produced a sound like that of a sword clashing. Moreover, the demon aura on the demon claw rolled. He grabbed the tiger's soul with force, wanting to corrode and demonize it. What saber is this? However, the demon claw immediately retracted as if it had caught a cactus or a hedgehog. At the same time, the demon aura on the demon claw mysteriously became incomparably thin, as if it had been devoured by something in an instant. On the tiger's soul, one could see that the golden blade of the tiger soul was already covered with a thick layer of pitch-black demonic aura. The demonic aura churned and didn't pass through the blade into Shirtian's body. Instead, it seemed to be pulled by something. Like a whale sucking in water, it surged into the green pearl on the blade where the hilt and blade were connected. In an instant, it was completely devoured without leaving a single drop behind. When he looked at the green pearl again, the originally dim green pearl had an additional luster. Wisps of green light flickered. The tiger's soul saber gave off a boundless evil aura and a thirst. The tiger's soul saber regained its previous golden color. The saber trembled, and that golden saber light seemed to have become even deeper. The tiger's soul was growing stronger. The blade's name is Tiger Soul. It is your nemesis. Kill. Shirtian gently wiped the blade and roared. He raised Tiger's soul and took the initiative to attack. He slashed horizontally at the demon god's head, wanting to cut off its head with one slash. When the saber was drawn, his body also moved forward. He took large strides forward. Each step he took was majestic and awe-inspiring. With every step he took, the thick and domineering aura around his body naturally became stronger. The aura around his body was so sharp that it could not be blocked. Back then, Tiger Soul had been refined with a soul-devouring stone, and in the end, it became Tiger Soul. It allowed Tiger Soul to have the ability to devour soul essences, blood essences, and thousands of demonic auras. Demon aura was the most terrifying thing to others. If they were contaminated by it, they could possibly turn into a demon. However, to Tiger's soul, it was food. It was a great supplement. The more it devoured, the stronger Tiger's soul would become. The current Tiger Soul was only an inferior-grade Dharma treasure. It relied on its indestructible body and extremely sharp edge. In order to evolve and transform to become stronger, it would need to absorb a large amount of blood essences, absorb a large amount of souls, and go through countless battles. At this moment, the demon god was in front of him. It was not his actual body, but only a strand of demon soul. No matter how strong the demon soul was, with Tiger Soul in hand, there was nothing to fear. How dare an ant kill this demon god? The demon god was slightly stunned. Then, he let out an earth-shattering roar. His two demon eyes flashed with endless anger. Unknowingly, the scorpion tail behind him had disappeared. Blood demon finger! The crippled blood demon god's cold eyes had a hint of bloodlust. Looking at Tiger Soul's sharp blade, he extended a demon claw and extended a demon finger. The demon finger suddenly turned blood-red as it pointed at Tiger Soul. Bang! A terrifying demonic power came from Tiger Soul. A layer of blood-red waves instantly flooded the Tiger Soul. Following Tiger Soul, it directly bombarded Shirtian's body. The demonic power was so strong that with a finger, the space was completely annihilated and shrouded in blood-red light. "Nether prison power, apply to my body," Tion roared. The 19 levels of nether prison shook, and a huge force from nether prison suddenly applied to his body. Tiger's soul shook, and the blood-red light that covered the blade rippled. The green bead showed its power again, releasing a strange devouring force. Countless blood-red lights surged into the green bead. With a turn of his feet and a flick of his wrist, Tiger's soul drew a blade shadow in front of him. Waves of energy from his body poured into Tiger's soul without reservation. Ultimate Emperor Mask. A purplish gold mask that could only cover half of his face suddenly appeared on his face. His aura suddenly surged. His strength had risen by 2 levels. Ultimate Emperor Way. Death of gods and demons. Endless death intent burst out from Tiger's soul, sweeping through the entire world. At this moment, a pitch-black scorpion tail had silently appeared behind Tion. Chapter 412. Thousands of godfiends flew out of the saber and instantly covered the entire area. At the same time, they rushed back into the saber like swallows returning to their nests, constantly rushing into the tiger's soul. Several thousand fiend gods, every single one of them had strength that wasn't the slightest bit inferior to Indra. At this moment, every time a fiend god rushed into the tiger's soul, the death intent emitted from the tiger's soul would grow even denser as waves of terrifying energy gushed out. The tiger's soul also expanded and became bigger. In the blink of an eye, the tiger's soul had turned into a giant saber that was 10,000 feet long. The power gathered in the saber had reached an unbelievable level. Wearing the purple gold mask and relying on the mask's ability to increase his realm, Tion had stepped into the ancient demon king realm in a short period of time. When thousands of ancient demon kings gathered together at the same time, the power gathered was extremely terrifying. The saber had yet to be slashed out. The terrifying sense of death swept out from the saber instantly covered the entire infernal purgatory. The terrifying saber intent penetrated the past and present, shattering the void. The space around the tiger's soul twisted mysteriously and collapsed, completely shattering into fragments of space-time. The endless sharpness directly locked onto the fiend celestial. No matter how strong the fiend celestial was in the past, it was only in the past. At this moment, it was only a wisp of the fiend celestial's soul in front of it. It had the will of the fiend celestial, but it did not have the fiend celestial's strength. Facing the terrifying saber that looked like a magma erupting, the fiend celestial could not help but reveal a look of shock in his eyes. Poof! The scorpion tail that appeared silently behind Tion shot out a blood-red scorpion needle. It instantly stood upright and stabbed towards Tion's back at lightning speed. This attack came too strangely, and no one could guard against it. Even Tion did not notice it as he slashed the tiger's soul at the fiend celestial from afar. This slash could split heaven and earth. This slash was like a punishment on behalf of the heavens, killing gods and demons. Wherever the saber beam passed, everything was split apart. Although the fiend celestial was shocked by the tiger soul, he did not even try to dodge as he felt that he could not dodge. There was a smug look in his eyes. It was as if he could see his scorpion needle piercing into Tion's body. It completely turned his divine soul into thick blood. Void mirror, freeze! However, everything could change. Just as the scorpion needle was about to pierce into Tion's body, a mystic light suddenly broke through the air and covered the scorpion tail. Under the illumination of the mystic light, the scorpion tail froze on Tion's back as if it had been immobilized. It was only an inch away from piercing into his body. On the other side of the mystic light, Ao Qing was holding an ancient mirror in one hand. Her face was covered in sweat. Crack! The tiger's soul slashed through the void with an unstoppable force. It appeared above the demon god's head. The tiger soul's sharpness was on full display as it emitted an astonishing saber beam. The saber split the demon god into two from head to toe. The massive demon god's body dissipated on the spot, turning into balls of pitch-black demon chi. Amidst the demonic energy, a wisp of blood shot straight down into the nether prison. Roar! When the green bead on the tiger's soul saw the demonic energy, it let out a roar as if it had seen a delicacy. A powerful devouring force burst forth from the green bead, enveloping the demonic energy and sucking it into the green bead. In an instant it was completely devoured. On the surface of the green bead, streaks of dark green light intertwined together, like an emerald. From the green bead, streams of pure energy continuously poured into the tiger's soul. Low tiger roars continuously sounded from the tiger's soul. Those roars were filled with joy. The tiger's soul is about to transform. When Di Shurtian saw this, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. The stronger the tiger's soul was, the stronger he would be. He didn't expect that the tiger's soul would begin to evolve after devouring a demon god's demonic energy. It was a rare happy occasion. Quick, lunatic D, the demon god's soul isn't in the demonic energy. He's escaping into the nether prison. Don't let him escape. This demon god was known for his cunning and ferocity since ancient times. When his demonic soul has reached an almost indelible state, use the power of the Eye of Heavenly Punishment to blast him into the 19th layer of the nether prison. Suppress him for the time being. Dark roared when he saw the wisp of blood fleeing and trying to devour the other soul essences in the nether prison. He knew that although it was only a wisp of demonic soul, it might not be difficult to defeat him, but it would be almost impossible to destroy him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have just been suppressed in ancient times. Divine light of heavenly punishment to send you into the nether prison. Di Shurtian was the true master of the nether prison. Under Dark's guidance, he immediately found the location of the wisp of demonic soul. He pointed at the wisp of blood, and immediately, a strange vortex appeared in the nether prison. A purple divine eye opened in the vortex, and a beam of divine light fell from the purple eye and smashed into the wisp of blood. The divine light went straight through the 18th layer of the nether prison and fell into the 19th layer of the nether prison with the wisp of blood. Di Shurtian, my demonic soul is immortal. You can't do anything to me. Sooner or later, the puny nether prison will swallow you whole. An arrogant roar came from the wisp of blood. It shuttled left and right in the nether prison, trying to find a way out. However, it was surrounded by endless darkness. There was silence, no light, no sound, as if it was a void. It was very strange, and even time seemed to have lost its meaning here. Drifting in it without any roots, it was truly an eternal exile. Dark looked very dispirited. He glanced at the wisp of blood in the nether prison, gritted his teeth, and said, "Crazy D, this guy's demonic soul is very difficult to destroy. Temporarily trapping him in the nether prison is only a temporary solution. Sooner or later, we won't be able to trap him. After you get out, you must find more souls as soon as possible and strengthen the nether prison as soon as possible. You must not drag another big guy like him in now. Otherwise, the nether prison won't be able to suppress him. At that time, it will be in danger of collapsing completely." "Okay. I'll think of a way." Di Shurtian nodded, a bright light flashing in his eyes. In the secular world, China has begun to expand its territory. There will be a lot of wars. When the time comes, I should be able to collect them. The place where I agreed to go with Wu Wudi and the others back then seems to have a large number of remnant souls. It's a good time to collect them. As the nether prison grew stronger, so would the Eye of Heaven's punishment. He would not be careless about this. The Eye of Heaven's punishment was an important trump card for him now. The stronger it was, the better. For this, there was no harm in paying any price. "Hey, Sakura, this place is so gloomy because of you. Don't tell me this is really nether prison." Ao Qing blinked her eyes and looked around curiously. She looked at the layers of nether prison and saw all kinds of torture instruments placed in front of her. Many souls were being punished in the nether prison at this moment. They were letting out shrill screams. It sounded very scary. Thank you for what happened just now. If you hadn't stopped that scorpion tail in time, I'm afraid I would have been seriously injured even if I didn't die. Di Shirtian didn't answer directly. He turned to look at Ao Qing and the other two and nodded to thank her. He also saw the situation just now and couldn't help but be shocked. If he was really stabbed, he had a premonition that it would definitely not be a good thing. Although he had doubts about how Ao Qing and the others could travel here, it was not good to ask at this moment. It's just a small matter. If you really want to thank me, then you'll have to gamble with me one more time. Ao Qing was indeed Ao Qing, her words never straying from her true nature. She couldn't leave the word gamble when she opened her mouth. Okay. Di Shirtian looked at her deeply and agreed without hesitation. He agreed very quickly. So quickly that even Ao Qing and the others couldn't help but show a trace of surprise on their faces. Hey, it's really strange. Last time when Big Sister said that she wanted to gamble with you, you kept declining and reluctantly agreed. Why did you agree so quickly this time? Ao Hong shouted loudly. She just asked directly. Di Shirtian smiled calmly and raised his eyebrows. A touch of arrogance appeared on his face. Although I, Di Shirtian, am not good at gambling, I will not mistreat anyone who is kind to me. Since you want to gamble, then I will gamble with you. If you like to gamble, in the future, I will build a gambling house in the Demon City and give it to you. His expression was proud with an indomitable spirit. You want to build a demon city? Is it fun? Ao Shui blinked her watery eyes and looked curiously at Di Shirtian. She asked in a childish voice. If it is built, I will invite the 3 princesses to come. Di Shirtian smiled indifferently and looked around. Why don't we go out and talk? The nether prison was gloomy and scary everywhere, filled with all kinds of screams. It was indeed not a good place to talk. Of course, no one objected to this suggestion. After leaving the nether prison, Ao Qing and the others appeared at their original place. Di Shirtian's closed eyes suddenly opened, and a strange light appeared in his eyes. After talking in the dock, it seemed that Ao Qing was not in the mood to gamble today. She took the initiative to say that she would gamble next time and left not long after. Di Shirtian also adjusted his breath and meditated. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed quietly by. Time always flies like an arrow. It couldn't be left behind. After 3 days, the day of the Ling Long Xian gathering officially opened. In the South Pole ice region, in this bitter cold land, there was frost everywhere, and the sky was filled with snow. The cold here was difficult for even cultivators to withstand. Normally, cultivators in the core formation realm had to use their vital energy to protect their bodies. If they walked here, they might not be able to walk far. If they were not careful, they might be frozen into ice. It was an extremely scary place. But at this moment, in this bitter cold land, there were many figures flying through the air. In midair, a huge island floated up. A transparent shield rose on the island, covering the entire island. On the island, it was still warm and flowers were blooming, as if it was not affected by the cold outside at all. On the island, countless figures were scattered in various places, flowing endlessly. It was very lively. Most of them were cultivators, but there were also many demons among them. Even the demon beasts that had not transformed could walk around freely. From time to time, they would speak human language and trade with some cultivators. It looked very strange. At this moment, on the Immortal Island, a man and a woman stepped on it. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. I support the author and I support the original readers. Chapter 413. Sure, Tian, the Ling Long Immortal Auction only happens once every 10 years. Although the interval is not long, the locations announced by the Ling Long Pavilion are often different, so the number of times we can make it is not many. It's considered good to be able to make it once or twice in 100 years. However, the quality of the various treasures that appear here is often much higher than the ordinary market. It is said that there are several grand finale treasures for sale every time. Even in the free trade before the auction, there are often examples of finding treasures. Since we have made it, we must take a good look. Maybe we can find a few treasures. Dressed in palace attire, the white fox had a colorful ribbon fluttering around her waist. Today, her face was actually covered with a layer of light veil, concealing her peerless beauty that was enough to turn all living things upside down. After recovering the strength of an ancient demon king, the charm on her body had become even more valiant. Even if Sakra's temperament wasn't bad, he would still occasionally be aroused by the charm on her body. He had to recite the Imperial Tyrant Heart mantra in his heart from time to time. If she did not wear the veil now, perhaps the Ling Long Immortal Auction would not be able to continue as normal. And I saw the auction book you gave me before, and there are indeed many good things in it. I want to see if there is a chance to buy one or two. Sure Tian, who was wearing a black robe, had taken the tiger soul into the demon palace to be nurtured. After swallowing the huge amount of demon qi, the tiger soul had begun to transform, and it would take some time for the transformation to complete. His black hair casually draped over his shoulders, and his tall and sturdy body stood next to Bai Hu, giving off a harmonious charm. They were like a pair of lovers. Bai Hu heard this and chuckled. Sure Tian, I heard you want to build a demon city. That's right. Sure Tian never thought that there would be such a secret in this world, so he was not surprised that Bai Hu knew about it. Instead, he said with certainty, the reason why my demon race has never been able to develop is actually because most of the demon race are lone wolves, and can't be united. It is easy to be defeated one by one. I can't control the rest with my current ability, but I have the myriad demon valley behind me, and the demon race in the valley actually respect me as their king, so they must follow my rules. As he looked around, there was an endless stream of people. The location of the Immortal Auction House and the Immortal Auction House had a long time ago, and there were many people, but there was not much chaos. The Ling Long Celestial Island was a miniature version of the Demon City. Looking at these, the conviction in Sakra's heart became even more firm. How do you want to build it? Do you need my help? The white fox's eyes flashed as she looked at Sakra with a serious emotion in her voice. Sakra slightly shook his head and said, although I already have a lot of ideas about the Demon City, I'm still missing a key item. Without it, I can't build the Demon City I want. I can only see if I can get what I want here. Mentioning it again made his desire for the refining god pot reach an incomparably strong level. The smelting god pot was not difficult to make, but the problem was that the materials were difficult to find. If he could open the treasure house he got in the Heavenly Demon Mystery Land at this moment, it would not be a big problem to find the suitable materials with the huge collection of treasures in it. However, the restriction of the Linglong Treasure Tower made him feel powerless now, and he could only look at the treasure house and sigh. Not wanting to dwell on this topic, Xiao Qin suddenly changed the topic and asked, "Oh, right. Tian Xiang, did you see Medusa in the heaven-reaching pagoda back then?" "Back then, we entered the heaven-reaching pagoda together. However, when I summoned her, she did not come to meet up with me. Until now, there is still no trace of her. I suspect something might have happened to her in the tower." They walked side by side to those stalls. As they spoke, they could not help but frown slightly. At that time, there were not 6 people who entered the tower, but 7. Medusa was among them, but she disappeared inexplicably. At that time they did not care about it, but now they could not help but feel suspicious. They guessed that something might have happened to her in the tower. "Yes. I once received a sound transmission from her. It seemed that something had happened. It was extremely sudden. She only said that she was unable to follow us out of the tower, the white fox muttered. A trace of bewilderment flashed through its eyes. Senior brother, look, the spiritual herbs here have good medicinal properties. There are ice hunger fruit, heavenly face fruit, and energy cultivation fruit. Hey, look, what flower is this? The medicinal properties are maintained well. Fellow Taoist, what flower is this? How much is it? As they were talking, they heard a man and a woman, who were wearing similar clothes, standing in front of a stall not far away from them. The owner of the stall was an old man of about 50 years old. On the stall, there were some bottles and jars with labels on them. They were all elixirs. In addition, there were some jade boxes containing various kinds of spiritual herbs. Among them, the ice hunger fruit was a kind of spiritual fruit that was ice blue in color. It grew in cold places and tasted exceptionally delicious. After swallowing it, one could abstain from eating for a month. It was a kind of spiritual fruit that cultivators often ate. Its spiritual essence was of the lower tier of the earth grade. It was the main ingredient used to refine the fasting pill. As for the heavenly face fruit, it was a spiritual fruit that female cultivators loved the most. It was light pink in color and was the size of a pearl. It could nourish one's een and nourish one's appearance. If swallowed, it could rejuvenate one's youth and make one stay young forever. It could be used to refine the heavenly face pill. It was also of the middle tier of the earth grade. The essence cultivation fruit was also a kind of spiritual essence that was in great demand in the cultivation world. Many sects specialized in cultivating it. It was green in color and had the effect of removing impurities in the body, prolonging one's life, and strengthening the body. If a cultivator took it, it could strengthen one's foundation and consolidate one's cultivation. It could be used to refine the essence cultivation pill. The lower tier of the earth grade. The essence cultivation pill was the most suitable pill in the cultivation world for cultivators from chi refinement to core formation to increase their cultivation. Although the higher one's cultivation level was, the less effective it was still very valuable. For example, these 3 spiritual herbs, although their grades weren't too high, they could grow up to 100 years old. They were very precious. However, there was also an extremely strange flower inside. The flower was completely red in color. The petals were very big and shaped like a rose, but the stem was very short. Its surface was rippling with a strange halo. If one looked carefully, even their soul would faintly appear a bit blurry. It was as if it was about to fly out of the body. When Di Shirtian and Bai Hu heard it, they couldn't help but walk over curiously. Looking at the strange flower in front of them, a record suddenly flashed in their minds. The red spider lily, the flower was fiery red. It was also known as the welcoming flower. Its petals were very big and shaped like a rose. Its stem was very short and grew on Huangquan Road. When it bloomed on the ground, from afar, it looked like a carpet paved with blood. After a person died, their soul would follow the guidance of this flower to the underworld. This flower was very resilient and couldn't be trampled to death. As soon as a person went over, it would immediately return to its original state. It was rumored that this flower had a magical power that could awaken people's memories of their previous life. It was very magical. The upper tier of the earth grade. It's actually the red spider lily. I think I saw it on the red spider lily island in the heavenly demon mystic realm. Could it be this? Di Shirtian muttered to himself. I remember that it's recorded in the wine god's treasure book that the nourishing spirit wine, the soul-returning wine, and the senseless wine all require this flower as one of the ingredients. He secretly decided in his heart that he must buy this red spider lily. If he planted it in the Shenong Grotto heaven and multiplied it, he wouldn't need to specifically look for it when he made wine in the future. I don't know what this flower is called, but I picked it up in the heavenly demon mystic realm. It grew by the Huangquan River, so it's definitely not an ordinary spiritual essence. If I hadn't taken a fancy to a good flying sword, I wouldn't have taken it out to buy it. When the old man saw that someone had taken a fancy to his item, he immediately became spirited and began to flatter it loudly. It was as if this flower was the most precious treasure in the world. How many spirit stones does this flower cost? When the senior brother and junior sister were suspicious, Tion pointed at the red spider lily and asked, 8,000 spirit stones. When the old man heard someone asking for the price, his spirit became even more excited. Looking at Tion's indifferent expression and that awe-inspiring aura, he was secretly shocked. However, he still rubbed his hands and opened his mouth to say a price. In the cultivation world, spiritual essences were divided into 4 categories: mortal grade, earth grade, fairy grade, and divine grade. Each grade could be divided into 3 grades: high, middle, and low. The mortal grade was made of common herbs, which could be easily cultivated. The earth grade was made of some precious spiritual herbs. Generally, spiritual essences above the earth grade would cost at least hundreds of spirit stones. It was extremely common for spiritual essences to cost thousands of spirit stones. If it was above the fairy grade, it would cost hundreds of thousands or even millions of spirit stones. If it was above the divine grade, its value could not be measured by spirit stones. Okay, I'll take it. Tion bought the red spider lily without hesitation. He didn't know if there was anyone around who knew what the red spider lily was. If someone recognized it, 8,000 spirit stones might not be enough to buy it. After that, he sold some seeds of spiritual fruits, such as the heaven face fruit and the vitality cultivation fruit. Although the ripe spiritual fruits were good, they didn't have pits, so they couldn't be used for planting. With the help of the Shinnon Grotto Heaven, it was most cost-effective to buy the seeds. Along with the crowd, he slowly wandered around the stalls. When he saw spiritual essences that he didn't have, he bought them frequently. If there were seeds, he would buy them without hesitation. Walking around the island, there were all kinds of stalls and all kinds of things which really opened his eyes for a while. He secretly sighed, Ling Long Xian Club is really worthy of its name. There were all kinds of elixirs, magic tools, spiritual talismans, magic weapons, refining materials, and almost everything. There were many kinds of things that you couldn't think of, but there was nothing you couldn't find. Along the way, it could be said that there were so many things that he couldn't take in. And Tion was not stingy with his spirit stones. As long as he saw something, he would buy frequently. Some rare refining materials and all kinds of spiritual essences were what he bought the most. As for those magic tools and magic weapons, he would not spend his spirit stones on them. Even so, the spirit stones in his waist pouch were still flowing out like water. After shopping for half a day, he had hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, and more than 200,000 had been spent. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 4:14. Just as they were looking at the various stalls, suddenly, a burst of noise entered Sakura and the rest's ears. Young brothers, I'll take this jade slip for 10,000 spirit stones. You can sell it to me. I'll give you the spiritual stones right away. Humph! Are you trying to bully us because we're young? The mysterious access scripture is a martial arts scripture. Although the martial arts have declined, and it's only a low-grade martial arts scripture, you want to take it away with just 10,000 spirit stones? Don't even think about it. My brother and I found it in a cave. No one can take it away without 100,000 spiritual stones. This is Ling Long Celestial Island. We're not afraid of you. Looking in the direction of the voice, he saw a pair of brothers, about 18 or 19 years old, arguing with a young man in luxurious clothes in front of them with red necks. The young man held a black bone fan in his hand and gently waved it, creating a gentle breeze. Behind him was an old man. When the young man saw the two brothers take back the jade slip in his hand, a gloomy look flashed across his eyes. An ancient book of martial practice? It said that martial practitioners are extremely powerful, even more powerful than sword practitioners. However, the inheritance of martial practice has been broken. Only a few people practice martial practice. But I met a martial practitioner called Wu Wudi. His strength is really amazing. He challenges almost everywhere he goes. I heard that even the master of the Greenwood sect in the nascent soul stage was defeated by him. If it's really an ancient book of martial practice, 100,000 spiritual stones is not expensive at all. That's right. If it's a complete martial practice method, it's not something that can be bought with 10,000 spiritual stones. That's right. This is Ling Long Celestial Island. If anyone makes trouble here and is caught by the Ling Long Pavilion, not only will he be punished severely, but he will also be expelled from the Celestial Island. He will never be allowed to set foot on this island again. Little brothers, don't be afraid. This is Ling Long Celestial Island. No matter how powerful your identity is outside, it's useless here. Don't be afraid of him. What jade slip? Show me. If it's an ancient book of martial practice, I'll buy it. That's right. When the two brothers shouted out, the surrounding cultivators all gathered around them and spoke a few words of encouragement. It seemed that they were not afraid of the young man's powerful identity at all. The young man's face darkened. Clearly, his heart was filled with anger. Some cultivators took the jade slip and examined it. After confirming that it was indeed a martial cultivation method, they began to bid one after another. They began to fight for the jade slip. In the blink of an eye, the price rose steadily. Wu Wudi. When Di Shirtian heard this, he couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. He muttered to himself, I never thought that he would be able to break through to such a high level in just 10 years. He can already challenge a nascent soul cultivator. Martial cultivators are indeed powerful. Thinking about it, he really hadn't seen a martial cultivation technique before. He couldn't help but take a few steps forward, wanting to see if he could buy it and study the martial cultivation technique. However, based on the competition, the price kept rising. In the blink of an eye, it was close to 200,000. Zhang Xian shook his head lightly, not daring to step forward. 200,000 spirit stones to buy a jade slip, this kind of extravagant thing was not something he could do. Crazy D, you're really stupid. Jade slips are not the purple mansion heavenly scriptures of the ancient times. The storage method is so simple. Why are you still spending spirit stones to buy it? Just look at it with your divine eye. It's just a jade slip. There are no restrictions in it. Just look at it if you want. Suddenly, Ming cursed in his mind. He said in a disdainful tone, The heavenly punishment divine, I can see the contents of the jade slip? Di Shirtian was slightly shocked and a little surprised. He had already comprehended the divine eye. It had two heaven-defying abilities. First, it could directly seize the divine soul from the enemy's body. Second, it could use the heavenly punishment divine light to erase the enemy's cultivation. However, it was not something he could use now. Back then, he had only used it once with the support of the blood altar. What he could really master was only the ability to seize the divine soul. Do you think your divine eye is just for decoration? If I'm not wrong, its origin is extremely extraordinary. Ordinary heavenly eyes, yin-yang eyes, and so on are just ordinary trash in front of it. The divine eye itself has the power to see through yin and yang and see through heaven and earth. That's a jade slip, not a heavenly scripture. As long as you want to, you can easily see the contents of the jade slip. Ming snorted disdainfully. Crazy D, if you have time, quickly find a place to go into seclusion and familiarize yourself with your divine eye. If nothing unexpected happens, it will probably be your strongest divine ability in the future. Sakura didn't quarrel with him. The matter of going into seclusion wasn't something he could do right now. The matter here wasn't over yet. After it was over, he really wanted to go into seclusion once. The breakthrough was already imminent. Moreover, he had the intention to go to the 10,000 Beasts sect. I'll try first. If there really is such a divine ability, then I can steal the sky and change the sun. All the jade slips can't stop me from prying. After pondering for a moment, he turned his head to look at the jade slip that was still in the hands of the two brothers. The purple mark between his eyebrows flashed with purple light and swept across the jade slip like a flowing wave. In an instant, Tirtian only felt that the jade slip strangely faded in his eyes. The words in it turned into ancient seals and appeared before his eyes. With his powerful memory, all the contents were imprinted in his mind in an instant. It was the mystery access scripture. He remembered the whole text in his mind without missing a word. Good, good, good. Sakra couldn't help but feel a burst of ecstasy in his heart, and he shouted 3 good words in his heart. One must know that the cultivation method recorded in the jade slip had always been extremely expensive. If one wanted to buy it, not to mention spending a large number of spirit stones, even if one used up all the spirit stones he might not be able to buy a few. But now, he could use his own divine eyes to steal the sky and replace the sun. He directly read the contents of the jade slip without any scruples. What did this mean? It meant that in the future, ordinary jade slips would not be able to stop him at all. He could read whatever he wanted. He did not need to pay any price and could easily get things that others had to pay a great price to get. If the cultivation methods stolen from these jade slips are copied in ancient volumes, they will be included in the collection of my myriad demon valley. Wouldn't it be faster to strengthen the strength of my myriad demon valley? Tirtian's mind was constantly expanding. The wisdom of human beings was undeniably very creative. Refining weapons, refining elixirs, refining talismans, refining formations, and all kinds of branches were what the demon clan lacked. It was not that the demon clan's wisdom was inferior to that of human beings. Every transformed demon clan had wisdom not inferior to that of human beings, but the key was that they had lost their inheritance. There was no place to learn even if they wanted to. If there were those cultivation methods, why couldn't there be alchemists and refiners in the demon clan? Some demons were born with fire, and their demon fire was more powerful than the true samadhi fire. If they stood on the same line, how could they be inferior to the cultivators? It seems that this time, I have to be a thief for a while. After pondering for a while, he came back to his senses and made up his mind. He looked at the stalls around him. Although there were not many jade slips, there were also quite a few. A purple light flickered between his eyebrows and swept through these jade slips. In an instant, no one knew that the contents of the jade slips had been stolen in just a few breaths. It could be said that no one knew. However, who was beside him, seemed to have noticed something and looked at him inexplicably. It seemed to be somewhat meaningful. At this moment, the tallest Linglong pavilion on the immortal island was heavily guarded. Looking at this Linglong pavilion, it was not comparable to the one that Yu Linglong carried with her. It was 100 feet tall and divided into 9 floors. It was said that each floor was prepared for different guests. For example, the first floor was for cultivators below the nascent soul stage. Inside, they could choose their favorite treasures. The second floor was for those below the tribulation stage. The third floor was for all guests below the immortal stage. The auction would also be held here. Among them, the 5th floor was specially used for the auction. The facilities inside were complete. It was built with the method of a mustard seed and could accommodate millions of people at the same time. It was said that if there was a need, there could be more. This method could be said to be amazing. At this time, on the top floor of the Linglong pavilion, Yu Linglong and her mother were looking at the lively scene on the island together. "Mother, are we really going to take those things out to auction?" I'm afraid that no one has the ability to bid for them even if we take them out. Moreover, even we don't know what the use of some of them is. Yu Linglong frowned slightly and said with some confusion. Obviously, she seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied with something. Linglong, we only care about the auction. Don't worry too much about whether we can auction it. Moreover, I have received news that the passage to the purple gold mainland from the heaven realm has been opened. There will be a group of immortals and Buddhas from the heaven realm coming down. If there are no accidents, they might appear when the auction starts. We don't have to worry about not being able to auction it, the black-clothed woman said with certainty. She seemed to be extremely calm. Heaven realm? Why would people from the heaven realm suddenly come to the purple gold mainland? When Yu Linglong heard this news, she could not help but be slightly stunned. She said with some astonishment, "Could something big have happened? Linglong, do you still remember that strange heavenly omen that suddenly appeared back then, where ghosts cried and gods howled and the sun and moon lost their light?" The black-clothed woman raised her eyes and looked at the void with some yearning in her eyes. She said, "If there are no accidents, that should be the birth of some kind of powerful innate spirit treasure, or even a heavenly omen that would only appear when someone created a peerless cultivation technique that could shock the world and make ghosts and gods cry. Moreover, according to the location of the heavenly omen, it is most likely to appear in the purple gold mainland." She sighed softly and continued, "Moreover, it is nothing more than the world seed that is about to mature. I'm afraid that the purple gold mainland will be in a lot of trouble from now on." When Yu Linglong heard this, she was silent for a while before saying, "Without the seed of life, the world seed cannot form an inner world. We also don't know where the divine tree of life is." She sighed softly, and the light in her eyes gradually deepened. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 4:15. The heavenly realm, the demon realm, and the underworld each existed independently, but they all relied on the land of origin, the purple gold mainland. The purple gold mainland was the true source and center of the heavenly realm. The other heavenly realms were all branches that had migrated from the purple gold mainland, the true ancestral land. It was still the mainland. If one day the heaven realm and the demon realm were to be destroyed due to some accident, and the entire world was destroyed into nothingness, then the purple gold continent would not be affected. On the contrary, if the purple gold continent was destroyed, then the 10,000 worlds that existed around the continent would all be destroyed like bubbles and illusions. In reality, the purple gold mainland was the origin of the heavenly realm. It was the foundation, the source. If the source was destroyed, naturally, everything would be an illusion and would be destroyed. In ancient times, there was no heavenly realm or demon realm. Later on, those peerless experts worked together to split open the primal chaos with their supreme divine abilities and evolve them. In terms of foundation, naturally, it could not be compared to the purple gold mainland, the land of origin that was born from the chaos. The mystery of the land of origin could not be described in 3 days and 3 nights. For example, how could incredible life forms like the world tree and the divine tree of life grow if it was not the land of origin? Crack! In the sky, violent winds blew and dark clouds rolled. Terrifying bolts of lightning shuttled back and forth in the clouds like dragons and snakes that danced wantonly. It was a frightening sight. Below, there was a boundless grassland. On the grassland, herds of cattle and sheep that usually liked to eat fresh and tender grass in fertile areas seemed to feel the oppressive feeling coming from the sky. They all looked for places to hide from the upcoming storm. Rumble! Suddenly, in the grassland under the storm, the surrounding grass in a low-lying area that was obviously sunken suddenly shook. It was as if an earth dragon was turning over, making a strange rumbling sound. Then, with a crash, the grass in the low-lying area strangely collapsed into the ground. It was as if there was a swamp below swallowing the things above. A terrifying pressure suddenly emerged from the ground and soared into the sky. Even the dark clouds and lightning that were gathering in the sky were slowed down by the impact of this pressure. The clouds rolled violently, almost collapsing from the impact. It suppressed the power of the thunderstorm. Swoosh! A nameless might surged out from the ground, causing all living beings within 1,000 kilometers to feel an inexplicable sense of fear from the bottom of their hearts. They could not help but flee outwards or directly curl up on the ground, as if they had submitted to him. Even the heavens and earth were cleared. In an instant, even the thunder and lightning stopped roaring. The ground shook, causing the surrounding 1,000 miles to shake as well. Looking at the ground, a strange hole that could accommodate 100 people at the same time appeared on the grassland. This hole was extremely deep. A terrifying aura was emitted from within. It was circular in shape, like a deep well that had been magnified 100 times. If someone stood at the edge of the well and glanced inside, they would see that the space in the well was constantly twisting and shattering, turning into spatial turbulence. Terrifying blades of spacetime constantly danced about, filling every inch of space. There was basically no place that remained calm. The grass that had collapsed earlier was crushed into powder as soon as it entered the cave. That was terrifying. Near the mouth of the well, there were various colors of light flashing, which seemed to be the light brought out when space was broken. The destructive aura that came out of the well from time to time made people scared and not dare to approach it easily. At the edge of the well, there were countless mysterious and ancient seal characters that were constantly flashing with majestic light, giving off a mysterious color. Voila! In the well, there was a violent roar, and a layer of colorful halo burst out, covering the mouth of the well. At the same time, 3 figures rushed out directly from the halo. Looking at their appearance, the armor on their bodies was somewhat tattered, and there were hideous and terrible cracks. The light on the armor was extremely dim. Moreover, it was disappearing quickly. It seemed that it should have been destroyed. So close, this well of gods and demons is really terrifying. There are endless space fragments everywhere. Sharp blades passing through it. If you are not careful, you will die. This immortal robe is completely destroyed. Fortunately, we finally reach the end at the last moment. Otherwise, this time we will really be buried in this well of gods and demons. A middle-aged Taoist with a green horsetail whisk in his hand stroked his slender beard. He looked calm and tranquil, like a transcendent being. However, the faint smile on the corner of his mouth also told that he was not as otherworldly as he seemed. Shingong Hu, Motherf *Ker, being with a god of bad luck like you is really bad luck. When others are in the well of gods and devils, if they are careful, they won't even encounter a single space storm. Being with you, I'm actually unlucky enough to encounter 9 space storms. My martial body was almost crushed to pieces by it. Next time, I will not go with you even if you beat me to death. No matter how strong my martial body is, it can't withstand the torment of a jinx like you. A middle-aged man with a face full of indignation appeared. He had a tall and sturdy build. The armor on his body had long been shredded to pieces, revealing his valiant body. Layers of mysterious yellow light appeared on his skin. There were wounds on his body that were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the blood was flowing backwards. In the blink of an eye, they were completely healed, as if they were never injured. Qing Yuan, you are a martial cultivator and have a martial body to protect you. Look at me, this ocean immortal robe is completely ruined. This is a top-quality immortal robe, comparable to a top-quality magic treasure. It is only 1 step away from a spirit treasure. A young man in blue looked at the ruined immortal robe in his hand with a pained expression. He shouted with indignation, "This time, if it wasn't for the world tree source seed maturing, I wouldn't have come to the purple gold continent through the well of gods and demons at this time. How unlucky." He shook his head and sighed, "Forget it, This is the fate of us rogue cultivators. If we can find some world source seeds first and bring them back to the heaven realm, they will be the most popular treasures. We won't have to worry about not being able to make a fortune. Alright, Brother Qingyuan, Brother Lan Yu, I've heard long ago in the heaven realm that there's a Linglong pavilion on the purple gold continent. It has an extraordinary background, and it's rumored that there's an immortal emperor-level expert overseeing it. Every 10 years, an auction will be held on the purple gold continent. The good things that appear in the auction are precious even in the heaven realm. Now that the auction is about to start, why don't we go take a look? Shingong, who waved his horsetail whisk and smiled, we can also take this opportunity to see the strength of the purple gold continent. I heard that many cultivators who went through their heavenly tribulations and entered the immortal realm didn't choose to ascend to the heaven realm. Instead, they chose to stay here. Perhaps we can see 1 or 2 fellow cultivators. Damn, you jinx, don't say the word friend again. Just hearing it makes me feel cold. Qingyuan's body trembled, and his expression changed slightly. He quickly shouted, "Let's go." With a light shout, 3 streams of light streaked across the sky and disappeared from the grassland. Around the well of demons and gods, a layer of strange ripples appeared, covering its tracks. From the outside, it was still a grassland, but if something really came here, it would definitely not be able to escape the miserable fate of falling into the well and being crushed into powder by the countless fragments inside. The Well of Demons and Gods was an extremely mysterious place in the world. It was also a mysterious place that existed in the purple gold continent since ancient times. Moreover, it was indeed incomparably mysterious. It could be said to be a well that led to the heavens. In the well, it was said that it could lead to thousands of worlds. It was actually the key button that connected the worlds. Moreover, no matter which world appeared, no matter what kind of small world it was, as long as it was born, there would be a well of demons and gods inside. It was just that the size and scale of the well were relatively small. Through those well of demons and gods, one could return to the purple gold continent. This was the most direct way to the purple gold continent. However, it could only lead to the purple gold continent. In other worlds, one couldn't use the Well of Demons and Gods to travel to any other world except the land of origin. Moreover, when traveling through the Well of Demons and Gods, the first thing one had to face was the spatial fragments that were everywhere in the well. Once one couldn't withstand it, one would be torn into pieces. Turning into powder in the fragments, even one's soul couldn't escape. It was extremely terrifying. Especially inside, there would be spatial storms that would appear from time to time. Those were 100 times more terrifying than the fragments. Therefore, entering the well was generally a scene of 9 deaths and one's life. However, the Well of Demons and Gods was always the most mysterious passage that connected thousands of worlds. It was also the most indestructible passage. In ancient times, it was said that a peerless powerhouse wanted to destroy the Well of Demons and Gods, but was strangely swallowed by the Well of Demons and Gods, never to be heard of again. This also made it a mysterious place that existed eternally like the Tower of Babel. Let's not talk about this. Anyway, it had been 5 days since the start of the Linglong Immortals Gathering. The first 9 days of the Linglong Immortals Gathering were free trade, and after that, the Linglong Pavilion's auction would begin. Although the auction was the highlight, there were also people who could occasionally find good treasures in the free trade before it. And ever since he knew how to use his divine eyes, Sakura had completely become a great thief from the heavens. With the power of his divine eye, he stole the sky and replaced the sun. As long as it was a jade slip that was put up for sale at a stall, the contents of the jade slip would be secretly recorded in his mind, and he would silently steal the contents of the jade slip. At night, he would use a blank jade slip to engrave the contents into his own collection. After a few days, he didn't get tired of it. He was really rampant. His harvest was incomparably rich. He obtained thousands of copies of various cultivation methods. Among them, there were alchemy, weapon refining, other talismans, and so on. There were almost all kinds of cultivation method. Although there weren't any that were too high level, this harvest was still like a pie that fell from the sky. It was a big piece. It's now the 5th day. In 4 days, the free trade here will stop. At that time, it will be the time of the auction. I wonder if there are any new jade slips here today. Tion walked alone on the island, secretly thinking in his mind. In the past few days, he had basically read all the jade slips he saw. If there were no new ones, today's harvest wouldn't be too great. Just as he was about to walk into the crowd, 3 figures came up from outside the island, each with a different temperament. Their whole body was full of divine light, and it was difficult to see their cultivation realm from the outside. Walking on the ground, they were similar to ordinary people. Fellow Taoist, please wait. After the middle-aged Taoist priest in a Taoist robe and holding a horsetail whisk in his hand came up, he glanced around and saw Tion in front of him. He stretched out his hand and hurriedly called out. There seemed to be an inexplicable power in that voice. Tion, who was about to walk forward, suddenly stopped involuntarily. What was strange was that Tion himself didn't have this idea of stopping at all. His body acted on its own accord, as if there was an inexplicable force suddenly exerting itself on his body. There was a bad feeling in his heart, but since he stopped, Tion frowned slightly. He still turned around and looked forward. In front of him was Shingong Hu and the other 2. When Qing Yuan and Lan Yu heard Shingong Hu's shout, their faces couldn't help but twitch a few times. Looking at Tion, there was a kind of pity in his eyes. Here it comes again. This crow's mouth, I feel a chill in my heart when I hear it. I'm afraid this little brother is going to suffer. It's not like you don't know how powerful his mouth is. Last time I had bad luck for a whole month. Even drinking wine can fill the gap between my teeth. It's simply pervasive. The 2 whispered a few words, then they both stepped back a few steps to distance themselves from Shingong Hu. May I ask what's the matter? Tion turned his head to look at the smiling Taoist in front of him. That smile looked very amiable. However, he didn't know why, but he had an inexplicable feeling that something bad was going to happen to him. This feeling was extremely strong. After carefully searching, he couldn't find anything. He was just secretly suspicious. I stopped you because I wanted to ask if the auction on Ling Long Celestial Island has started yet. If you can tell us the details of the auction, this 3 Revolutions Origin Essence pill will be my thank. Shingong Hu's smile was very gentle. Together with his sage-like demeanor, he really looked like a virtuous person who had achieved the Tao. People couldn't help but feel close to him. What was even more intimate was the jade box he took out. There was a longan-sized golden pill in the box. It seemed that this was the Origin Essence pill he mentioned. Just by smelling the medicinal fragrance, one could tell that its quality was extraordinary. There's no need to thank me. Ling Long Celestial Island has 9 days of free trade. After that, the auction will start. Now it's the 5th day of free trade. Sakura slightly frowned as he glanced at the pure vitality pill. It was obtained so easily, he always felt that something was wrong. He wasn't greedy for such a small thing. After he finished speaking, he turned around and was about to leave. However, he had just taken a few steps. Fellow, please wait. As soon as he heard that, his body, which was walking forward, strangely stopped again. Tion's expression suddenly changed. He finally noticed something unusual. It could actually control his actions in such a strange way. At this moment, wind blew behind his head. He raised his hand, "Pa." The jade box fell into his hand. It was the box that contained the Origin Essence pill. Along with the box, there was a sentence, "This is the Origin Essence pill as my thanks. You deserve it." Qing Yuan's pupils contracted violently, and he muttered to himself, but I'll have to suffer a little. Remember, my surname is Shingong. Tian didn't look back, but he also didn't give the box back. He casually accepted it. Since it was delivered to his door, there was no reason to give it back. Unlucky. Why did the unlucky child of the Shingong family come here? Unlucky, really unlucky. It's better for this old man to stay away. What kind of unlucky luck is this? That guy's descendants are all unlucky. It's really bad luck to meet him. Not far away, in a remote corner, a very sloppy old man glanced over with his turbid eyes. When he saw Shingong Hu and heard him say that his surname was Shingong, his face revealed an expression as if he had eaten feces. His face was full of bad luck. He quickly walked a few steps away. Looking at his appearance, he was known as the know-it-all who knew everything in the world. That's strange. Why do I find that sentence so familiar? Tian walked away suspiciously. Suddenly, he felt that those words were very familiar. He seemed to have some impression of it, but he couldn't remember it. He temporarily put aside his doubts and walked to a nearby stall. Pata! Suddenly, he felt something cold on his forehead, as if something had hit his head. He quickly looked up and saw a crow flying over his head. Tian touched his forehead, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch a few times. A fierce light flashed in his eyes, and the crow flying in the sky silently fell down stiffly. Unlucky! He secretly cursed. Shaking his head, he took out the god of wine gourd, opened the gourd, and naturally drank a mouthful. Cough, cough, but before he could swallow it, his face suddenly turned pale, as if he had choked on something. He coughed repeatedly, and not only did he not drink a mouthful of spirit wine, but he also coughed it all out. He could even choke on spirit wine. How could this be? Tian was not an ordinary person. This kind of small matter was naturally not a big problem, and he could easily solve it. But two inexplicable things happened to him in succession, and he was secretly surprised. Normally, this was almost impossible. What kind of crow would dare to shit on a tiger's head? He had drunk spirit wine countless times, but he actually choked on it. How could this be? Usually, if it happened once, it would be fine, but if it happened twice in succession, then it might not be simple. TSK, this kid, it's a pity that he drank a mouthful of good wine. It seems to be the taste of mysterious ice jade fire wine. I haven't smelled it in a long time. I'll ask him for 2 cups later. The know-it-all sat on a stone with a playful expression, looking at Tian, who was in deep thought, and muttered to himself, "Unlucky, really unlucky. I'm afraid that brat will suffer a little. It's also because this Shingong kid's cultivation is not high. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem of bad luck, it would be a real disaster. Fellow Taoist, please wait, he's called Shingong?" Sakura, who was standing in the same place and pondering, suddenly widened his eyes. A trace of horror unconsciously appeared on his face, and he turned pale with fright. Even his scalp was about to explode, and the hair on his body stood on end. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 416. His surname is Shingong? Shingongbao? The jinx of immortals? Damn, I can't be so unlucky. Tian felt goosebumps all over his body. His scalp was numb, and his mind was suddenly filled with turbulent waves. These two inexplicable accidents, coupled with the inexplicable familiarity in his mind, made him feel as if there was a flash of light in his mind. Suddenly, a guy who was comparable to the jinx, appeared in his mind. In his previous life, he had also read the 4 great classical novels several times. He didn't dare to say that he had too much experience, but he also had some insights and had a deep impression of some of the characters in it. In the Investiture of the Gods, the one who left the deepest impression on him was Shungongbao, who was known as the Jinx of Immortals. Think about it, Shen Gongbao's words, "Fellow Taoist, please stay," had sent many disciples of the Jie sect to the God investiture platform. Even immortals couldn't stop him. He was the Jinx of Immortals, the Jinx of Immortals. The power of his mouth was so great that it surpassed any divine weapon or Dharma treasure. It was simply all-pervasive, and there was no way to block it. If he hadn't said, "Fellow Taoist, please stay," the Jie sect would not have fallen into the situation where almost the entire sect was destroyed when the investiture of the gods happened. Think about it, who was not afraid of Shen Gongbao? At first, Di Shutian didn't care about it. Although he felt a little strange, he didn't think about it in other places. Until now, he suddenly remembered and couldn't help but feel cold sweat. Light flashed in his eyes, revealing a trace of fear and doubt. Impossible, this is the Zijin land, not the untainted world, and not the investiture of the gods. How could there be a jinx like Shen Gongbao the Jinx? After thinking for a while, he felt that something was wrong. Could it be that, in this world, there was also an unpredictable jinx like Shen Gongbao? Phew! He heavily exhaled the turbid breath in his chest, and a light flashed in his eyes. He thought to himself, whatever, even if his surname is Shen Gongbao, I don't believe that it's really so evil. Damn. So King unlucky. Although he was secretly cheering in his heart, he couldn't help but burst out swearing. He was already on full alert. His surname is Shingong? Lunatic D, you are so unlucky. Of all the people you can meet, you just have to meet this guy named Shengong. Suddenly, Dark said with a voice full of bad luck. In ancient times, the ancestor of the Shengong family was called Shen Gongbao. No one knew where he came from. He was a living disaster, a god of misfortune. His favorite thing to say was, "Fellow Taoist, please wait." If they really stopped to talk to him, bad luck would befall them, and all kinds of strange things could happen to them. In the worst case, they might even lose their lives. Back then, my master was called by him once, and a meteor shower fell on the same day, all of them smashed onto my master's head. At that time, my master had yet to become an unparalleled expert. He was almost smashed to death. This was most likely the reincarnation of the Bane. Hurry, hurry, hurry and leave. Don't be careless. Ming spoke as if she'd eaten a fly, and she seemed extremely disgusted. However, there was no lack of fear in her voice. He repeatedly urged Di Shutian to leave as soon as possible, the further the better. Shen Gongbao? Reincarnation of the Bane? What the hell is going on? As soon as Sakura heard that there was a Shen Gongbao in the ancient times, his face turned extremely ugly. He didn't walk towards the bustling crowd. Instead, he saw a mountain peak not far away. On top of the mountain peak, there were many strange stones in various shapes. One could faintly see the shapes of various animals on these strange stones. There were clouds and mist surrounding it. It was a rather interesting place. He didn't enter the trading area. Instead, he turned and walked toward the strange mountain. That Shen Gongbao was also a demon in ancient times. His original form was a leopard. However, no one knew where he came from. He didn't have the demonic aura of the Yao clan. Instead, he had a more sage-like demeanor than human cultivators. His mouth was too powerful and evil. Those who were stopped by him were all extremely unlucky. Countless people had died because of him. Therefore, he was called the Bane and the God of Misfortune. There was also the God of Misfortune. Anyone who met him would turn and leave. However, his mouth was too vicious. He was killed by some powerful people who weren't afraid of death. However, this guy's soul was difficult to destroy. Every time, he would enter the cycle of reincarnation under the protection of a strange power and be reincarnated again. After being reincarnated, his surname would definitely be Shen Gongbao. I didn't forget the ability of the Bane at all. Although his memory was gone, he still has bad luck. Ming clearly loathed this Shengong, and his tone was somewhat unfriendly. Moreover, the higher this fellow's cultivation is, the more powerful his aura of misfortune is. He always provokes powerful fellows and ends up being killed. His soul reincarnated again and again. Not only could he not wash away the bad luck, but it also became stronger and stronger. In ancient times, he was killed no less than 30 or 40 times. Until now, I don't know how many times he has been reincarnated. Ming didn't hide anything. He briefly explained some things in ancient times. Tian couldn't help but feel a chill in his bones. God-slaying demon-destroying thunder fell from the sky and struck a demon saint to death. Divine thunder of annihilation fell from the sky and beat the ancient giants into their original weak state. As he walked, a Huang Quan river appeared under his feet. When he fell into the river, his body was completely corroded. Wait, almost such strange things would happen. It depended on your luck. If your luck was good, you might be able to keep your life. If your luck was bad, you might even lose your life. He was the most evil person in the world with bad luck. Lunatic D, you have to be careful these few days. Don't be plagued by bad luck. That will be troublesome. Even gods can't stop the bane of immortals. The worry in Dark's words made Tian's vigilance increase by several levels. His mind was focused like never before. Everything around him was completely reflected in his mind. No wind or grass could escape his senses. The royal true force surged out of the demon residence. It covered his entire body and filled every inch of his flesh and blood. At this moment, it was enough to deal with most sudden changes. Rumble! Tian was walking to the foot of the mountain when suddenly, there was a roar from above. A millstone-sized stone rolled violently toward him. Perhaps it was rolling too fast, but the outside of the stone actually ignited with flames. It turned into a huge fireball and rushed over fiercely. Before it arrived, the blazing fire wave had already hit him in the face. It really is everywhere. Tian cursed in his heart. He didn't want to fight it head-on. The firestone rolled down like this. Its momentum was no less than 1,000 caddies. Although it wasn't difficult for him to fight it head-on, it was just a waste of energy. He moved his body and dodged to the left, dodging dozens of feet. He thought to himself, this fireball can't be so evil that it can turn on its own, right? F***CK. However, before he could finish his thought, he immediately saw that the piece of flint suddenly collided with an insignificant small protruding rock and immediately spun towards where he was standing. Its speed suddenly increased by dozens of times, and it appeared in front of him in an instant. Break! He punched out, and the muscles on his arm wriggled rapidly like dragons. Waves of vast power spewed out from every inch of his flesh and blood. Waves of dense demon chi covered his arm as he fiercely punched the big stone. Suddenly, Tian's body trembled, and terrifying cracks appeared on the ground where he was standing. As for the piece of flint, it was instantly shattered by the collision and shot out in all directions. It smashed into the ground and let out a series of rumbling sounds. Crash! Before he could relax, the ground suddenly collapsed, and a big hole appeared. The big hole was full of sharp stone pillars. Fortunately, he had never let down his guard. As soon as he sensed that something was wrong, he immediately flew into the air and moved to the side, dodging the disaster. It's here, it's finally here, Ming said with extreme disgust. It seems that misfortune has already entangled you. However, the god of misfortune's cultivation is not high now, and he doesn't really have the intention to harm you. Otherwise, what just rolled down would not be a stone, but a meteor falling from the sky or magma from the ground. You might have crashed into a spacecraft. It was indeed as Ming had said. During this entire day, Indra could be considered to have completely experienced how terrifying it was to be plagued by misfortune. Even though he was fully vigilant and didn't suffer any harm, he was truly exhausted in both mind and spirit because all sorts of things had occurred. It was simply impossible to guard against. In one day, it was more uncomfortable than fighting hundreds of powerful experts 100 times. The uncomfortable thing was that these were not enemies at all, but misfortune in the dark, and he could not avoid it even if he wanted to. The invisible enemies did not even have a target to vent their anger on. Find Shingong Hu? He did not even think about this. If he were to say, "Fellow cultivator, please wait," he could not bear it. Damn it, if a meteor fell from nowhere, he would not even have a place to cry. On this day, Sakura didn't do anything. Just dealing with those strange things had already exhausted him. Looking at the surroundings, after going through untold hardships, he finally safely arrived at the peak of the mountain after an entire day. Looking at the surroundings, the strange rocks were towering, the clouds and mist were faintly discernible, and the waves undulated as he overlooked the surroundings. His originally gloomy mood couldn't help but slightly ease up. He shook his head and lightly spat out a mouthful of turbid air. He sighed, "This god of misfortune, I hope to meet him less in the future. Hee hee, how is it, little D, the taste of being entangled in misfortune is fun. I saw that you were playing quite interesting just now, throwing fireballs and kicking stones. It looks very tasty." Sakura muttered to himself softly and didn't think that there would be others around him. Suddenly, he heard a playful voice ringing in his ears. He abruptly turned around and looked towards the direction of the voice. A shabbily dressed old man was leaning against a large rock with his back leaning against it. He was holding a wine gourd in his hand and pouring 1 or 2 mouthfuls of wine into his mouth from time to time. The rich wine aroma spread out and made people's spirits shake. "Senior Know-It-All, why are you here?" Seeing this old man in front of him, Di Shirtian could not help but be startled. Although he had only met this old man once in the Qin family and talked for a while, this old man's playful demeanor was deeply imprinted in Di Shirtian's mind. Back then, Di Shirtian had guessed that this old man might be a strange person who liked to play around. Back then, he could not see through this old man's cultivation, and now, he still could not see through him. There was not even a trace of true essence on this old man's body. No matter how he looked at it, he was just an ordinary old man. However, if he really treated this old man as an ordinary person, Di Shirtian felt like he could smash his head against a tofu. He had appeared behind Xiao Chen, but he had not sensed him at all. If Xiao Chen had not made a sound, he probably would not have noticed him even now. His appearance had not changed for more than 10 years. He was drinking spiritual wine. If an ordinary person drank spiritual wine, they would probably explode on the spot. There would not be much other result. Furthermore, he could tell Xiao Chen's current situation. How could Di Shirtian doubt that this old man was definitely a strange person who liked to play around? Hee hee, why can't this old man be here? Little D, your cultivation has grown really fast. You've actually reached the peak of the second transformation of the Yaodan and are about to undergo the tribulation. I don't know what kind of cultivation method you're cultivating. Your realm is so restrained that even I had to observe it for 3 full days before I could roughly guess it. The old man laughed strangely. His strange eyes sized up Di Shirtian a few times, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. I remember when I saw you in the Zither Music Valley more than 10 years ago, you were just a little monster beast. In the blink of an eye, 10 years have passed, and you've actually crossed so many levels in succession. You're really not simple. Di Shirtian's cultivation speed was shocking no matter where he went. He could be said to be a stunning talent second to none in the Yao clan. However, in his eyes there was only admiration. This junior was just lucky. Di Shirtian glanced at the old man and smiled indifferently. He did not know why, but there was a kind of amiable feeling from him. He instinctively felt that the old man did not have any malice towards him. With a flash of light in his hand, the wine god's gourd appeared in his hand. He opened it and poured a mouthful into his mouth. A feeling of ice and fire surged in his heart. Senior loves wine, Why don't you try my dark ice jade fire wine? It's now 100 years old. Saying so, he tossed the gourd in front of the old man. The old man caught it casually. Seeing the jade gourd, his eyes lit up and he said, "The wine god's gourd of the wine god. You're really lucky to be able to obtain such a treasure. I remember drinking with that old man back then. What a pity." He sighed softly, and a trace of nostalgia appeared on his face. He poured a few mouthfuls of the wine, savored the taste of the wine, and nodded slightly. However, he was after all an eccentric person, and his nature was not one that liked to reminisce about the past. In just a moment, he returned to his usual frivolous self, and said with a smile, "Brat, I heard that you want to build a demon city. Coincidentally, I've obtained a piece of information that you can use. If you know about it, it might be of great benefit to your construction." His eyes lit up as he looked playfully at Sakura and said, "How about it, do you want to know? This old man doesn't want much this time. Give me 100 gourds of the dark ice jade fire wine and the monkey wine. What do you think? It will be of great benefit to my city construction?" Divine light flashed in Sakura's eyes as he secretly exclaimed in admiration. The know-it-all was indeed very resourceful. He really knew everything. However, he had been thinking about the matter of the demon city recently. Making the necessary preparations required a great deal of energy. Building a city was not an easy task in the secular world. In the cultivation world, it was even more important to pay attention to various aspects. Everything had to be taken care of. Among them, there were many very complicated things. Now that he heard that there was information that could help him build a city, he was very interested and asked without hesitation, "As long as the information is really helpful to this junior, I will not be stingy with just 200 gourds of spirit wine." Tian gently waved his hand, and 200 gourds were placed side by side in front of him in a flash of light. "If Senior wants, these spirit wines will be a gift to you." When Jack of all trades saw this, his eyes lit up like a hot-blooded young man who had seen a beautiful woman. His eyes shone brightly. His hand reached out at lightning speed, and in the blink of an eye, all the gourds were in front of him. With a casual grab, those gourds mysteriously disappeared. He did not see any storage treasures on him, and did not know where he hid them. Could it be the inner world? A thought flashed across Tian's mind. Little D, let me tell you, you will soon feel that it is worth it." After receiving the reward, the old man said, "I don't know what the Ling Long Pavilion is thinking at the Ling Long auction here, but they really took out a few good treasures for auction. Among them, there are 2 things that should be helpful for you to build a city." "2? What are they?" "One is the Tianji Wanshu painting, and the second is the God trapping ball." The old man looked serious when he mentioned these 2 things, and even the playful smile on his face was slightly restrained. Before Tian asked, he had already explained himself. Speaking of the Tianji Wanshu painting, it was made by Tianjizi, a great man in the ancient times. It contains an extremely mysterious and profound pivot technique. There are detailed plans on how to build cave residences and cities, and there are also all kinds of wonderful building drawings. Each drawing represents Tianjizi's peak attainment. Every immortal's cave or city built from them was a magical treasure that could shock the whole world. Do you see the Ling Long Celestial Island below? This island is only built based on a little of the Tianji Wanshu painting. It's quite extraordinary. If immortals and gods come in, they won't be able to escape if they really use their power. As he spoke, he paused, opened the gourd, and took a few gulps to moisten his throat. Then, he continued, "If you can get that mysterious heavenly map and build it, your name will definitely go down in history. There is such a drawing." Tian couldn't help but feel happy. If that was true, it would be of great value for him to build a demon city. However, after thinking for a while, he also understood that it was definitely not easy to build a complete drawing. He could only make a guess by referring to a part of it from the Ling Long celestial island. Its value would definitely be extremely high. If he wanted to get it, there might be a fierce competition during the auction. At that time, it would not be a competition of combat power, but of wealth. Although there would be no bloodshed in the competition of wealth, it would still be like a battlefield. There would definitely be tragic scenes. What is the God Trapping Ball? If you want to know more, please go to www.chidian.com to read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 4:18. Hee, this thing is a treasure that is hard to find in the world. Just like a child, Know-it-all had a frivolous expression as he looked at Sakura while giggling. He blinked his eyes and placed a hand on his head to forcefully scratch it, causing his originally messy hair to become even more messy as he smiled. Little Sakura, do you know about the Forbidden Land? Under that playful face there seemed to be a test. His two eyes looked at Di-Shirtian, but he was not in a hurry. He smiled and drank the spirit wine, showing a look of enjoyment on his face. Most of his thoughts could be seen on his face. Forbidden Land? Di-Shirtian raised his eyebrows, showing a trace of suspicion. Although his cultivation speed was astonishingly fast, he was somewhat lacking in experience. Thus, he was naturally unfamiliar with this unfamiliar place. However, just by hearing this name, he could vaguely guess that this place was not an ordinary place. Senior, please enlighten me. Di-Shirtian was not the kind of person who would puff himself up at his own cost. He casually drank a few mouthfuls of wine and asked Know-it-all for advice with a carefree expression. Know-it-all rolled his strange eyes and laughed strangely. I thought you wouldn't know either. You have only been cultivating for 10 to 20 years. No matter how smart you are, there are still things you don't know. Today, this old man will tell you, lest you say that I took your spirit wine and did not give you any benefit. As he spoke, he paused for a moment, not forgetting to savor the fine wine in his hand. Only then did he continue, since the beginning of the world and the evolution of the land of origin, a purple-gold divine light descended from the chaos and landed in the land of origin. Since then, all things in the world were born. The land of origin is also known as the purple-gold mainland. Sakura also didn't interrupt as he knew that the words that came out of Know-it-all's mouth definitely had its own uniqueness. He was actually talking about the origin of the purple-gold mainland. Immediately, he concentrated and listened attentively, imprinting every word and sentence into his mind. When the violet gold continent was first formed, there were also a large number of natural spirit treasures that were born in the primal chaos that fell and hid their tracks, waiting for an opportunity to be born. Among them, there were even a large number of natural spirit roots that broke through the primal chaos and grew and survived in the land of origin. These mysterious existences that descended from the primal chaos caused the continent to be filled with many mysterious and dangerous forbidden areas. Among them, 9 were the most prominent. They are known as the 9 Great Forbidden Lands. Every single one of these 9 forbidden grounds can be said to be dangerous and mysterious to the extreme. They're always enveloped in layers of mist. At least 9 out of 10 of those who entered were killed inside. It was common for an entire army to be wiped out. Even a peerless expert would not dare to enter it recklessly. Even they have a chance of dying. As Know-it-all spoke, his eyes were filled with longing. Although he was slightly fearful of the 9 Great Forbidden Lands, he also had a trace of desire. It was as if there were some rare treasures in there. Di-Shirtian's eyes shone brightly as he listened. He really did not know about these things. He did not expect that on the purple-gold mainland, there were actually 9 forbidden areas that even the peerless experts of the primal age were wary of. Dangers were often accompanied by opportunities. It was a blessing. The key was whether you had the luck to enjoy it. In his heart, he could not help but feel curious. He quickly asked, May I know which of the 9 great forbidden lands are? It's a waste of energy for you to know which ones they are. It's better that you don't tell me. But let me tell you, Tongtian Tower is one of them, and so is the Forbidden Land. Now, tell me, what kind of existence is the Forbidden Land? Know-it-all seemed to have some misgivings, and did not tell him all the 9 great Forbidden Lands. But just these 2 places were enough to make Di Shirtian's heart tremble. His eyes shone brightly. Was Tongtian Tower dangerous? Fierce. It was only the first level, but the 2 Emperor Phoenix birds almost took his life. And this was only one of the king beasts on the first level. There were many more powerful ones that he had not seen yet. Looking at how many levels there were in Tongtian Tower, how terrifying would it be if he went further up? He could barely survive on the first level, but on the second level, he might not even be able to survive. He had only seen the tip of the iceberg in Tongtian Tower. From this, one could imagine how dangerous and strange the other forbidden grounds were, and it was absolutely not inferior to this place. Turning his gaze, Sakura understood Know-it-all's meaning. What you mean is that the God-imprisoning sphere was obtained from the Forbidden Land. Senior, may I know what is so special about the Forbidden Land? Since he could not find out about the other 9 great Forbidden Lands from Know-it-all, he was not in a hurry. After all, he still had Ming, the 10,000-year-old antique. When the time came, he would definitely be able to find out about the other Forbidden Lands and their mysteries. However, he wanted to find out about the mystery of the Forbidden Land and the God-imprisoning sphere. Speaking of the Forbidden Land, it is extremely frightening. Since the ancient times, no one knows how big it is. However, in every inch of the Forbidden Land, there are thousands upon thousands of different restrictions. Every single restriction is different. Just an inch of space is filled with thousands upon thousands of restrictions. Countless restrictions are born, and countless restrictions are destroyed. If one were to fall inside, they would have to face endless restrictions at all times. Even a small step is as close as the distance between heaven and earth. With your current strength, if you enter it, not to mention the inside, you won't even be able to last a few minutes at the edge. As Know-it-all spoke, he put on a ferocious and terrifying expression. It was as if he wanted to scare Di Shirtian. It is indeed terrifying. With countless restrictions on you, the scene is indeed terrifying. If the entire Forbidden Land is intertwined with countless restrictions, it is indeed worthy of the name of the 9 great Forbidden Lands. Sakura was indeed shocked into a daze for a moment. He took a deep breath and slowly regained his senses. Now you know how powerful it is. You have to know that the edge of the Forbidden Land is fine. The deeper you go, the more powerful the restrictions are. However, there are also good things inside. In the deepest part of the Forbidden Land, there is a heaven-imprisoning divine restriction. This restriction is best at imprisoning all kinds of ownerless treasures. There are also many precious spiritual treasures of heaven and earth growing there. It is said that there are even natural spiritual roots. However, there are even more restrictions around these treasures. If you don't break the restrictions, you will never be able to get them. There was a sense of yearning in Know-it-all's words. He couldn't help but lick his lip. In the Forbidden Lands, countless restrictions are constantly being created and destroyed. After countless cycles, an extremely miraculous treasure was born in there. Those destroyed restrictive spells would gather together and form God-imprisoning spheres filled with countless restrictive spells. So this is the origin of the God-imprisoning sphere. Di Shirtian was shocked. His eyes flashed, and he immediately thought of the terrifying thing about this God-imprisoning sphere. It was not inferior to the nuclear bombs in his previous life. If the restrictions inside were to be drawn out and thrown out to smash on the enemy, the countless restrictions would immediately imprison and kill the enemy. Even the gods would not be able to block it. Good stuff. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was amazing. He couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Of course it's good stuff. If you can draw out the restrictions inside the God imprisoning sphere with a secret method and throw all these restrictions into your demon city. Think about it. How strong is your demon city's defense? I heard that the God imprisoning sphere this time is called the 9 heavens 10 earths God slaying demon slaying seal. There are tens of millions of restrictions inside it that form an extremely powerful divine restriction. It is extremely powerful. If you can get it and imprint it into your demon city, once you succeed, even the immortal kings and immortal emperors of the heaven realm will not be able to do anything to your demon city. As he listened quietly, Sakra was like a sponge, constantly absorbing these things that he didn't know. He finally had a rough understanding of the God imprisoning sphere. It turned out that there were strong and weak God imprisoning spheres. They were measured by the number of restrictions and the core restriction inside. Generally, they were divided into 10,000 restrictions, 100,000 restrictions, 1 million restrictions, and 10 million restrictions. There were also 5 types of restrictions. Every God imprisoning sphere must have a core restriction. This core restriction was formed by all the restrictions in the God imprisoning sphere. Naturally, the more restrictions there were, the greater the power. For example, 10,000 restrictions could probably form something like the Big Dipper 7 stars restriction, Great 5 elements restriction, and so on. The more restrictions there were, the stronger the restrictions formed. Once there were 10 million restrictions, the core restriction inside could be called a divine restriction. Its power was immeasurable. According to Know-It-All, the item being auctioned in the Ling Long Pavilion was actually a God sealing sphere that contained a myriad of restrictions. The core restriction within was actually the 9 heavens 10 earths God slaying demon annihilating seal. This was a divine restriction with unparalleled might. After a long time, Know-It-All said with a playful smile, "All right, little D, you should think about how to sell this heavenly secret Wanshu diagram and the God imprisoning sphere. Hee, there are a few fat sheep in front. I'll go grab some wool." As he said that, his eyes shone as he looked down the mountain. He saw that on the Ling Long Island, there were indeed a few cultivators wearing extremely luxurious clothes. They were all wearing extremely high-quality immortal clothes. With a wave of his hand, he ignored Di Shirtian and ran down the mountain by himself. In the blink of an eye, he rushed to the front of those cultivators and started chatting with them. Di Shirtian did not mind and only thought to himself. He was indeed tempted. These 2 items were both rare and good items. They were extremely important for the construction of a city. If he could get his hands on them, they would be of great help. He could not help but think about how to get them. If he auctioned them, he had already spent most of his spirit stones. It would be like pouring a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. It would not even be worth a fraction of his spirit stones. Do I really have to use the source of life to exchange for them? But that's too dangerous. Once it's exposed, even immortals would be tempted. Then I would really be in a dangerous situation. But if I don't use the source of life and just rely on the spirit wine, I'm afraid it's far from enough. His face was uncertain, and he was in a dilemma. By now, he had already deeply experienced the preciousness of the source of life. It was fine in the Tong Tian Tower, but here, crooks were mixed in with the honest folk. If people really knew about it, he would not be able to live a peaceful life. That would be like roasting himself on a fire. Regarding the matter of the 4 great classical novels in the previous chapter, I apologize here. I was in a rush to write and did not pay much attention. I originally meant to say that books like the 4 great classical novels were written too quickly and did not type a few words. For this, I sincerely apologize. I hope everyone can understand. Chapter 419. If he had already built the 1,000-demon city and used it as a foundation, even if he was exposed, he was confident that he could protect himself. With the power of the Thousand Demon City, and the integration of the soul-devouring White Bones portrait into the city, not to mention other things, even ordinary immortal realm powerhouses would die inside. He would not be afraid even if he was a wandering immortal. But the key was that it was just a fantasy. This put him in a dilemma. If he took out the source of life, it would not be a surprise to get the two treasures. But he would have to risk his life. He was not willing to let go of the two treasures. After all, the two treasures could increase the power of the demon city by several times, or even dozens of times. Is there really no way to get the best of both worlds? He looked up at the void. Outside the island of delicacy, snow was flying everywhere. In the sky, snow eagles were flying. Everywhere was pure white. It looked very pure. But Deschertien's mood was extremely gloomy. He was troubled. The know-it-all had given him a difficult problem. It was hard to choose. Lunatic D, it is not difficult. Those two treasures are indeed treasures. You must get them. It is easy to hide your identity. I am here. What are you afraid of? At this moment, Ming, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke. He sounded very proud, as if he could do anything. Deschertien did not care about that. He was overjoyed and quickly asked, Ming, do you have a way? This is just a small matter. Let me tell you a technique called the Mirage Illusory Energy. As long as you cultivate it, you can absorb the illusory energy of the clouds and cover your body. Not only can you hide your body, but even your body and appearance will become as hazy as a mirage. It will be difficult to see through. It will be like a cloud of fog. Most divine consciousness will not be able to see through your body. Even if you want to turn into a woman, it will be easy. Dark laughed strangely and directly sent a cultivation technique into Deschertien's mind. Good stuff. After a few glances, Deschertien couldn't help but praise. Although the illusory mirage did not have any offensive abilities and was only a small trick to conceal one's presence and identity, at this moment, it was no less than a rare treasure to him. Especially the illusory chi that covered his body. Even divine sense could not penetrate it. When cultivating, one had to absorb the illusory chi from the clouds and return it to one's body. This illusory chi could not be regenerated. However much illusory chi was absorbed, it would be stored in one's body. When one used it, one would use a secret technique to cover one's entire body. At the same time, when using the illusory mirage energy, one would constantly consume the illusory mirage energy in one's body. Once it was depleted, the illusory mirage energy would naturally lose its effect. Therefore, this could only be considered a relatively suitable small trick. It was perfect to use it in an auction. The key to the secret technique was how to extract and absorb the illusory chi in the cloud. Everything else was insignificant. His method was also simple and clear, taking an unconventional approach. It was very unique. With Deschertien's talent, he could even create the Imperial Book of Shocking World. He understood all the key points in an instant. Looking around, they were surrounded by clouds and mist. Moreover, at this time, everyone was attracted by the free trade below. They were all looking at the various treasures below. They had long been dazzled by Ling Long's eyes full of good things. Who would care about this place? Except for Deschertien, there was no one else. It's quiet here. It's suitable for me to extract the illusory chi. I don't have to look for other places with thick clouds and mist. Sakura muttered to himself as he stood in a remote corner facing the clouds. His hands quickly formed mysterious hand seals and bound the clouds in front of him. He then struck into the clouds. Strands of hazy and faintly discernible white threads were extracted from the clouds and spiraled in front of him. They gathered one by one as though he was spinning silk from a cocoon. It was a wonderful moment. 2 hours passed. In his hand, a fist-sized illusory ball had gathered. It was formed by countless illusory chi. Holding it in his hand, the illusory chi kept rolling and drifting, transforming into various images. Sometimes it was various animals, sometimes it was various objects. The images were very vivid and lifelike. It was like a living thing. This was not controlled by him. The illusory chi kept changing on its own. 2 hours only to condense this little bit. It's too little. It seems that I have to spend a lot of effort on this in the next few days. Di Shirtian looked at the illusory chi in his hand silently. He knew that this fist-sized illusory chi could only last for 4 hours at most if he used the illusory chi of mirage. Compared to the time of the auction, this little bit of illusory chi was far from enough. Based on the scale of the Pavilion of Delicacies auctions, it was said that the shortest one lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. The items that were auctioned were like flowing water. The scale of the auctions was truly second to none in the continent. Hiss! At his feet, a colorful strange snake suddenly appeared and bit his thigh at lightning speed. Before it pounced, the fishy smell had already hit his face, making him faint. The poison was extremely overbearing and fierce. Humph! Di Shirtian did not even turn his head. With a casual wave of his left hand, the strange snake was easily cut in two. Blood splashed in all directions. The corpse fell to the ground. Coincidentally, there were centipedes, scorpions, and all kinds of poisonous creatures all over the ground. Ever since he had stood there, all sorts of poisonous creatures had been attacking him. He had to admit that this Shengong guy was really strange. Once he was entangled with bad luck, he could not block it. There was really no end to it. Fortunately, none of them were very powerful. If it was really like what Ming said, stars fell from the sky and inexplicably rushed out of the Huangquan River. That would be really strange. His life would be over sooner or later. This god of bad luck, it's better to harm others. As soon as Di Shirtian thought of Shengong he felt a little headache. He secretly decided that if he met him in the future, he would turn around and leave from hundreds of miles away. The farther, the better. Who knew if there would be a meteor or thunder falling on his head next time? If that really happened, he would not even have a place to cry. That aura of misfortune was pervasive. There were a total of 9 days of free trading, and it was now the 5th day. Di Shirtian left a message to Bai Hu. He stayed on that mountain and kept extracting illusory chi, trying to condense as much illusory chi as possible in the remaining 4 days for emergency use. After all, he did not know how long the auction would last. He did not pay too much attention to the free trading below. He just went down every day to see if there were any new jade slips. He spent the rest of his time collecting illusory chi. Ling Long's celestial island was getting more and more lively during this period. Every day, a large number of cultivators rushed over from all directions, and there were also many demons. It was almost a big gathering. There were all kinds of demonic cultivators, sword cultivators, formation cultivators, talisman cultivators, elixir cultivators, and so on. Those that could not be seen at ordinary times could also be seen here. The free trading was naturally lively. But almost everyone was waiting for the real highlight, the beginning of the auction. It was said that at this moment, there were already millions of cultivators and demons gathered on the island. From this, it could be seen that the Ling Long Celestial Island was really a great event on the continent. Ling Long, has everything been arranged for this auction? When the 9th day was about to pass quietly in the Linglong Pavilion, Yu Linglong and her daughter also gathered together and whispered, "Has the virtual magical power of the auction house been opened? The entrance should be guarded by individual immortals to prevent anyone from causing trouble. Also, has the specific number of auction items been counted?" The auction items were not only brought out by Linglong Pavilion. There were also many items that had entered the island and were entrusted by others to be auctioned. These were all items that had been received in the past 9 days. It would take a lot of time to calculate and categorize them. Identification, etc., and various preparations were made. It was extremely complicated. Only Ling Long Pavilion. If it were any other place, it would not be able to operate at all. Mother, everything has been prepared. We are just waiting for the auction to start tomorrow. Yu Linglong's confident words came out from under the bamboo hat. During this period we have received a total of 3.45 million auction items. Among them, 1.2 million can be used as the reserve of Ling Long Pavilion, and we have negotiated with their owners to buy them. They will not be part of the auction. Together with the items that Ling Long Pavilion has taken out, the total number of auction items is 3 million. We have estimated that the entire auction will take at least 5 days. Numbers came out of her mouth one after another. Every sentence was related to the auction. It was quite amazing to be able to count them out in such a short time. Well, good Ling Long. This is your first time presiding over such a big event. There must be no mistake. The beautiful woman in black nodded in satisfaction and said, "This time, everyone in the VIP box must confirm that the other party has bought treasures worth tens of millions before giving them out." After a pause, she continued, "I have received news that this time, someone from the heaven realm has entered our celestial island. You have to be careful when dealing with them. It's best not to get in touch with them." As she spoke, there was a strange light in her eyes. "Mother, why is that? Could it be that they are from some big force in the heaven realm?" Yu Linglong's curiosity was piqued because of this. She turned her head and looked at her. Strangely, she asked her. Hearing that, the beautiful woman couldn't help but twitch her mouth a few times. Her face was a little pale. She hesitated and said, "What big force?" "They are the 3 evils of the heaven realm." After saying that, she turned around and left. It seemed that she was very unlucky and didn't want to say more. 3 evils of the heaven realm? Yu Linglong repeated the words in bewilderment. The curiosity in her eyes grew even stronger. Time passed. In the cultivation world, there was not much concept of time. There was a saying that cultivation had no time, which was a good description of this point. Quietly, the free trading time was over. In the early morning, a ray of aurora hung in the sky. It shone on this world of ice and snow. It shone on Ling Long's celestial island in midair. The Ling Long Pavilion, which was originally closed, standing on the island, was now wide open. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com and read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 420. Haha, it's finally here. It's called a small auction every 10 years, and it's only a big auction 100 years later. It's said that it'll be open for a few days this time, and there are millions of items being auctioned. I have to get at least one item this time. I heard that the auction house can hold millions or even tens of millions of items. I'm going to have an eye-opener this time, and I can show off to my descendants in the future. There are so many treasures in the immortal mirror. I heard that all the treasures in the auction were taken out by the Ling Long Pavilion, and they're all treasures. The drowning pill is a spirit pill that can help a combination body integration cultivator break through to the tribulation transcendence stage. There will definitely be a lot of combination body integration cultivators fighting for it. It's going to be a fierce battle. That's nothing. What doesn't the auction have? Medicinal pills, magical treasures, talismans, cultivation methods, spiritual materials. Which time doesn't it have everything? This grand event really makes people's blood boil. This is a competition of wealth, a competition of power. Damn it, I have to take a good look at it this time. Early in the morning, when the aurora burst out from the horizon and shone on Ling Long Island. On the island, groups of cultivators and demons were discussing animatedly. As they discussed, they also looked at the Ling Long Pavilion that stood in the middle of the immortal island and had an immortal aura. They were waiting for the Ling Long Pavilion to open. At this moment, there were already a lot of guards standing on both sides of the entrance of the Ling Long Pavilion. Judging from their auras, they were all Tribulation Transcendence cultivators. Tribulation Transcendence cultivators are guarding the door? All the cultivators who saw it couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. They now had a positive understanding of the power of the Ling Long Pavilion. Their thoughts of causing trouble were all dispelled. They directly extinguished them. They looked at a middle-aged man in white sitting with his eyes closed. His aura was very ethereal, and there was a hint of immortal chi that almost flew into the sky. Seeing this middle-aged man made all the cultivators tremble. No one dared to be presumptuous. He had an ethereal immortal chi, and there was no sense of power at all. He was probably an expert who had surpassed the immortal realm. Was he an itinerant immortal? Or a real immortal? The strength of the Ling Long Pavilion was enough to make most of the cultivators on the island shudder, and they secretly dispelled all negative thoughts. Pa-ta! A fat man with a round body walked out of Ling Long Pavilion. His face was full of richness, and he was dressed in luxurious clothes. He looked like a shopkeeper, a manager, and had a cheerful smile on his face. His smile gave everyone a sense of closeness. It was as if she was bathing in the spring breeze, and she had a good impression of him. When Yamcha arrived in front of the pavilion, he performed a cupped fist salute in all directions and said cheerfully, "I am Yamcha, the manager of the exquisite pavilion. I am also the host of this auction. After 10 years, I'm sure everyone is looking forward to this auction. There are some trivial things that I won't talk about here, so as not to waste everyone's time. Just a simple explanation." His voice was neither warm nor angry, but it had a strange power that made people involuntarily listen to him attentively. He continued, "In this auction, there are a total of 3 million items to be auctioned. Among them, there are pills, magic tools, magic treasures, talismans, cultivation methods, and all kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. You can find anything you want, no matter if you are a chi condensation cultivator or an immortal, you can find the treasures you need in the auction. The auction will continue until the end of the auction, and the price will be based on spiritual stones." His words spread over the entire Ling Long celestial island, and they entered everyone's ears clearly. Everyone present was also listening to him. When they heard that there were more than 3 million items to be auctioned, their eyes lit up faintly. This meant that as long as they paid a price, they could generally get 1 or 2 items. "I hereby announce that the Ling Long auction officially begins," Lutian shouted loudly. All of a sudden, thunderbolts exploded in the sky above Ling Long celestial island. They were even more gorgeous than the fireworks in the secular world. They were colorful and beautiful. It announced the start of the auction. Immediately, a large number of cultivators gathered in front of Ling Long Pavilion began to enter the auction. When they entered, they had to pay 10 spiritual stones per person. Although it was just a drop in the bucket for the cultivators here, Ling Long Pavilion was really good at making money. There were more than a few million cultivators on the island. If all of them entered and paid 10 spiritual stones per person, tens of millions of spiritual stones would go into Ling Long Pavilion's pocket. They could easily get a huge amount of wealth. Even the deities would be jealous of such means. This rule had been in place for a long time, and everyone knew about it. They all paid the spiritual stones and entered the auction house naturally. The gate of Ling Long Pavilion was big enough to allow 100 people to pass through at the same time. It was not slow at all. Ling Long Pavilion was like a monster, swallowing a large number of cultivators like flowing water. Among the large number of cultivators, there were also a large number of demons. Some of them were in their original forms, and some of them had already transformed. As for those who were still in their demonic beast forms, they generally did not come to join in the fun. After all, they did not have much money to buy treasures inside. Among these cultivators, a young man and a young woman in white walked forward side by side. Among them, the man and woman were very ordinary. They were the kind of people who would disappear in the blink of an eye if thrown into a crowd. Even their aura was like that of ordinary cultivators. They walked side by side like a pair of Tao companions. The strange thing was that if one used their divine sense to scan them at this moment, they would find that there seemed to be a layer of strange fog shrouding them. Even divine sense could not detect them clearly. It was strange. Shirtian, is it true that no one can see our true appearances like this? Not to mention detecting our aura, even the deities will not be able to see our true appearances as long as the illusory chi on us is not used up. The two of us have been condensing this illusory chi for 4 days. It is enough to support us until the end of the auction. We have personally tested the miraculous effects of the mirage illusory energy. There will be no problem. Haha. Interesting. I think the boss and the others are still wondering where we are. Needless to say, the man and woman in white were naturally Di Shirtian and Bai Hu. Ever since Di Shirtian obtained the miraculous disguise technique of the illusory chi from Ming, he thought about it and taught it to Bai Hu so that they could extract the illusory chi from the mountain peak together. As a matter of fact, they had already extracted enough illusory chi to support them until the end of the auction. Using the secret technique of the illusory chi, they covered their bodies with the illusory chi and changed their appearances and figures. The illusory chi of the illusory chi was indeed miraculous. This transformation was like the work of the god. There was no trace of illusory chi. It was as if they were born with this appearance. Whether it was the touch of their hands or the temperature of their faces, they were no different from ordinary people. As a matter of fact, the two of them were disguised as a pair of Tao companions. Their appearances were very ordinary, so no one paid much attention to them. They entered very quickly. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at Di Shirtian's side. Walking to the side of the door, there was a beautiful maidservant standing inside, collecting spirit stones. There was also a mysterious powerhouse who seemed to be an immortal who had been resting with his eyes closed. The two of you, I want a VIP room. Di Shirtian handed over 20 spirit stones, and his mouth seemed to say something inadvertently. VIP room? Fellow Taoist, because the number of VIP rooms is limited, you can't get one unless you have millions of spirit stones. Moreover, once the distribution is done, you won't be able to enter even if you have a lot of money. The maidservant had a professional smile. Although there was a trace of surprise in her eyes, she didn't show it on her face. Di Shirtian smiled faintly and took out a jade box. He pushed it inside and said, "The price of this thing is worth millions of spirit stones." The middle-aged man sitting inside suddenly opened his eyes. He waved his hand at the jade box and caught it in his hand. He gently opened it and looked inside. Suddenly, his eyes widened and his pupils expanded violently, as if he had seen something incredible in an instant. Even his breathing was slightly hurried. His Adam's apple squirmed. He took a deep breath and closed the box with difficulty. "Zizhu, this thing is worth millions, tens of millions of spirit stones." After saying that, he reluctantly returned the jade box to Di Shirtian's hand. There was a touch of desire in his eyes, but he couldn't hide it. "Yes, elder." When the maidservant Zizhu heard that, she looked at the jade box with a very different gaze. She knew that the item inside was definitely worth a lot. She picked up a purple-gold ancient jade token and respectfully placed it in front of Di Shirtian. She said, "This jade token is the number of the VIP room. You can enter the corresponding VIP room with this jade token." Di Shirtian picked up the jade token and looked at it. He saw that this jade token was actually a pretty good treasure. There were a lot of simple and unadorned patterns on it. The number 14 was engraved on it. Obviously, it represented the VIP room. After receiving the jade token, a maidservant would lead the way. They went all the way to the auction house. However, when the middle-aged man saw Di Shirtian and the others leave, a jade token suddenly flew out of his hand. It entered the void and disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was so fast that even Zizhu didn't see it. What? Someone took out the source of life? VIP room 14? Yu Linglong held a jade talisman in her hand. A message entered her mind from the jade talisman. In an instant, even with her temperament, she let out a cry of surprise. Her eyes were filled with shock. Someone is actually willing to take out such a rare treasure? She exclaimed. Someone is actually willing to take out such a rare treasure. Just one of them was worth 100 million spirit stones. Moreover, it's priceless. What did a source of life mean? It meant that it could nurture a source of the world and stimulate the source of the world within the source of life. It could truly transform a domain into an inner world. It was a treasure that any cultivator who passed the tribulation could only dream of. Moreover, even if someone had it, no one would be willing to take it out. It was truly a priceless treasure. Even with Yu Linglong's temperament, which had been tempered by reading countless treasures, she was instantly stirred up waves. The divine tree of life is the most mysterious place among the 9 great forbidden lands. The source of life that has been circulating in the world has always been extremely rare. Even with the wealth of the Linglong Pavilion, we don't have much in reserve. After all these years, we've used up all of them. Even Yu Linglong can only condense a domain and can't nurture an inner world. The beautiful woman in black's eyes flashed with light. She was also very cautious. However, since the man and woman in VIP room 14 took out such a treasure, they must be very interested in some of the items in our auction house. If they don't have enough money, they'll definitely use the source of life to exchange for it. Linglong, you have to pay close attention to the movements of VIP room 14. If there's any movement, you can personally go and greet them. You must get the source of life. This is a treasure that is hard to find even with money. Okay. Yu Linglong pondered and nodded. Obviously, she was also very concerned about this. This time, Di Shirtian's actions could be said to have shocked them greatly. There were 1,000 VIP rooms. Under the guidance of the maid, Di Shirtian and Bai Hu sat in VIP room 14. Inside, it was really like a luxurious living room. There was a pavilion made of mysterious jade. In the pavilion, there were tables and chairs. On the table, there were 3 plates of precious spirit fruit. Among them, there were vermilion fruit, heavenly spirit fruit, fire dragon fruit, jadeite fruit, and so on. Just the value of these spirit fruits alone was probably as high as hundreds of thousands of yuan. Moreover, this was just a free meal. This kind of spending was extraordinary. The Linglong Pavilion is really generous. Di Shirtian looked at the spiritual fruit in front of him, and in the blink of an eye, he looked forward, only to see that below there were chairs made of jade, neatly arranged in rows. There were so many of them that it was almost impossible to estimate, but at the same time, they were stored in this space, shrinking heaven and earth into a mustard seed. This divine ability also showed the strength of Linglong Pavilion. There was a high platform in the middle. On the platform, there was a special counter for displaying the auction items. When the items were placed on the counter, everyone present could see every trace of their lines clearly. It was as if they were really close to them. It was very convenient to observe them. There was also an auction table with a small hammer made of gold placed on it. It was used to make the final call and host the auction. All kinds of facilities were very complete. At this moment, a large number of cultivators entered the venue like fish dragons. They found seats and sat down one by one. Those empty seats disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. They were all full of people. As soon as they entered the venue, the momentum was quite extraordinary. It took half a day for all the cultivators on the Linglong Celestial Island to enter the venue. Dong! A crisp sound of a bell suddenly rang in the auction venue, echoing quietly. In that instant, Sakura also felt that his mind was focused, and his mind was clear. His mind was clear. He felt that his mind had reached its peak at this moment. He had never felt so comfortable before. This bell actually has the power to calm one's mind. It itself is definitely an extremely extraordinary treasure. Sakura nodded slightly and said, Haha, sure Tian, the Ling Long Pavilion is never short of treasures. Since the ancient times they have collected countless treasures. It's just a bell-type magic treasure. For them, it's just a magic treasure that's not very precious. I heard that this bell is called the heart-clearing bell. When the bell rings, I'm afraid the auction will start. Baihu chuckled. She reached out her slender fingers to pick up a red fruit on the plate and put it into her mouth. His eyes also turned to look at the auction stage outside. Lu Tian swaggered up the stage with his hands on his belly. Behind him was a group of 9 stunning beauties. Each of these women had a tray in their hands, and on each tray were various auction items. There was a black veil covering each tray that could conceal one's divine sense. Among them, the first maid stepped forward, put the tray in her hands on the counter, and removed the black veil. Wow! What a blood coral! This coral has grown a human shape. It's going to become a spirit. It'll take at least 10,000 years to have this effect. As soon as the black veil was removed, a blood-red light flashed. A meter-tall, blood-red plant appeared. It looked like a piece of jade, sparkling and translucent, and had the shape of a human. Whether it was the head or the limbs, they were all clearly visible. If they didn't look carefully, they would really think it was a child. It was lifelike. Lying in the blood-red coral, it was very magical. Everyone, this is the blood coral that only grows in the deep sea. It's extremely rare. Every 1,000 years, the blood coral will have magical effect. It can be refined into a high-grade earth-grade spirit pill, the 7 apertures coral pill. However, when it encounters danger, it will quickly recover from its injuries and cultivation. It can be said to be the best life-saving spirit pill. The essence of the 10,000-year blood coral can be refined into the 9 apertures coral pill. At a critical moment, it can be used to save one's life. Consuming it can also increase one's lifespan by 300 years. It's a rare treasure. Lu Tian stood on the stage, beaming with joy as he spoke. The moment he opened his mouth, he bragged about the blood coral as if it was a rare treasure that was rarely seen in the world. If you don't buy it, then you don't know the value of it. The starting price is 1 million spirit stones. Each increment must be no less than 10,000 spirit stones. Now please make your bids. Lu Tian took a deep breath and said the starting price. His eyes scanned the surroundings. A 10,000-year blood coral is indeed rare. It can't be bought outside. It can only be found here. I'll take it. 1,100,000. An old man sitting at the front called out a price in an old-fashioned manner. Humph, old man June, you want to compete for such a treasure with your little wealth? Hee hee, your lifespan is almost up. If you want to buy blood coral, ask me first. 1,300,000. I'll take the blood coral. Not far from the old man surnamed June, a red-faced old man called out with disdain. He immediately raised the price by 200,000 spirit stones. The blood coral was precious. It was precious because refining the 9 apertures coral pill could increase one's lifespan by 300 years. It must be known that unless one was an unparalleled expert, whether it was cultivators or immortals, they all had limited lifespans. Although their lifespans were long, there was a possibility that they would wither and die as time passed. Starting from the 2 old men, a war of wealth broke out. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. The price rose steadily. The Ling Long Pavilion is really generous. The price of this blood coral should be around 3 million spirit stones. It can also increase one's lifespan. I'm afraid that most people will be provoked. Di Shirtian drank 2 mouthfuls of spirit wine and said with a calm expression. He didn't find these methods strange at all. In his previous life, he was a businessman, so he naturally understood the trick. The purpose of the first item was to raise everyone's interest. Its value was definitely precious. However, the second item couldn't be compared to the first. Recently, I feel that my body can't take it anymore. My waist and back ache when I sit down. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com to read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 421. This was the most commonly used method, as well as an invisible message. Often, the value and preciousness of the first auction item represented the quality of the items that would be auctioned in the later stages of the auction. It also meant that in the later stages of the auction, almost every auction item would be worth more than 1,000,000 spirit stones. This kind of invisible message made many cultivators with hundreds of millions of spirit stones burning in their hearts. They felt that this trip to the Ling Long Pavilion was worth it. 5 million going thrice sold. When Lu Tian's gavel fell, the 10,000-year-old blood coral was finally sold to an old man in his 80s for a sky-high price of 5 million spirit stones. Then, a maidservant delivered the blood coral to him. The payment for the goods was settled. The transaction was done cleanly without the slightest bit of sloppiness. In the blink of an eye, the first auction item had already been won. On the stage, Lu Tian's smile did not fade. He was even more delighted with the big deal that had just been completed. The smile on his face became even more radiant. With a wave of his hand, the second auction item was placed on the counter. It was a shuttle-shaped magic tool. Although it was only a magic tool, it was a high-grade flying magic tool. In terms of value, it was not inferior to any top-grade magic tool or low-grade magic tool. It could be said that it was an excellent treasure for cultivators below the core formation stage. The cloud-piercing shuttle can reach a speed of 1,000 spirit stones. It can accommodate 3 people and has a formation that blocks divine sense. It is suitable for all cultivators below the nascent soul stage. It is a rare flying magic tool. The starting price is 10,000 spirit stones. Each increment must be at least 1,000 spirit stones. Now, please bid. As Di Shurtian expected, after the first 10,000-year-old blood coral, the second auction item immediately began to decline in value. It was almost incomparable. Although cultivators above the nascent soul stage might not care about this cloud-piercing shuttle, for cultivators below the nascent soul stage, it was no less than a top-grade magic tool. It was a good treasure for escaping. It was suitable for cultivators who were still at the lower levels. At this moment, low-level cultivators like this actually made up the majority in the auction hall. They could not compete for the 10,000-year-old blood coral, nor did they have the wealth to compete for it. However, the magic tool in front of them was not only a fine item, but also one that they could use. On the spot, it ignited the passion in their hearts. Their eyes lit up. 11,000! All right, this fellow Taoist offers 11,000 crystals. Are there any higher bids? 13,000. 10,000. It could be said that the auction was unprecedentedly hot. Shouts after shouts directly pushed the price of each auction item up. In the blink of an eye, the price of each item had exceeded its own value. Madness. At this moment, people were constantly calling out bids in the auction house. The air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. It was even more intense than a battlefield. What were they competing for? They were competing for wealth and resources. This was a war without bloodshed. The auction was conducted in an orderly manner. One by one, the auction items passed through the auction stage like flowing water. The items that the Ling Long Pavilion took out could all be said to be of high quality. None of them were of poor quality. Even the worst was a high-grade magic tool. Some of the magic tool's functions caused even more intense competition. In this fiery atmosphere, the auction items were successfully sold one after another. After half a day, more than 100,000 items were sold. However, almost all of the people bidding were the cultivators sitting in the public seats below. Above, none of the VIPs in the 1,000 VIP rooms made a bid. They didn't seem to be interested in the auction items in front of them. They just waited quietly in silence. Those in the VIP rooms were probably wealthier and had a higher status than the other cultivators. Naturally, the higher one stood, the better one's perspective. The items that were being hotly contested below might be rare treasures in the eyes of ordinary cultivators, but in the eyes of the VIPs, those were just things that could be easily obtained. Why would they lower themselves to compete with others for those things? They were looking at the treasures that were sold in the later stages of the auction. Those were the real treasures. No matter how many items were sold in the earlier stages, they couldn't compare to the later ones. Wait! They were all waiting for the last few days of the auction. TSK. This Ling Long Pavilion is really impressive. Not only did they set up the spatial mustard seed divine ability, but they also have the ability to reverse time and space. No matter how I look at it, they seem to have the shadow of heavenly demon Zue from back then. Suddenly, Dark's slightly surprised voice sounded in Deshirtian's ears. There was a trace of surprise in his voice. Reverse time and space? Heavenly demon Zue? When Deshirtian heard that, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. He hurriedly swept his gaze around, wanting to sense the surrounding time and space, but he found that he couldn't find anything. It seemed to be the same as usual. Crazy D, don't waste your energy. The array formation here is very ingenious. Although it's not as good as your exquisite creation pagoda, it's difficult for even immortals to detect it, let alone you. Even I only discovered it by accident now. I was almost fooled. TSK, amazing. It made one day feel like 10 days had passed. No wonder it could auction more than 100,000 items in less than half a day. It even hid it from everyone. Nether clicked her tongue and shouted with interest. From what it said, it seemed that in here, it could make one day longer. One day could be compared to 10 days. However, one day was still one day. To turn 10 days into one day was a strange ability. No wonder the Ling Long Pavilion could finish such a huge auction in a few days. Heavenly Demon Zue, could it be that the Ling Long Pavilion is related to her? Deshirtian took a deep breath, and the look in his eyes gradually turned serious. He still remembered that in the Heavenly Demon's secret realm, Heavenly Demon Zue's primordial spirit imprint left behind in the exquisite pagoda said, "We will meet again." At that time, he only found it strange. Now, he couldn't help but ponder it. Could it be that Heavenly Demon Zue really didn't die? Just as Ming said, so long as one attains the undying realm in this world, then an expert like a heavenly demon is practically impossible to be destroyed by the heavens and buried by the earth. Even if one's body perishes, but his soul remains, he still has a chance to be reincarnated. He thought quickly in his mind. Indeed, the heavenly demon was said to have an undying body. Even if there was only a drop of blood left, there was still the possibility of resurrection. It was not possible to kill an undying expert with ordinary means. He vaguely felt that Zue's words might become a reality. If you return, what kind of attitude will you have when you return? After a long time, Deshirtian slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air in his chest. The look in his eyes was unusually deep, as if it contained endless mysteries. He stopped thinking about it and put his attention on the auction in front of him. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. 1 day was equivalent to 10 days in the outside world, and 2 days passed quietly. No, it should be said that it passed in the midst of intense competition. In these 2 days, the auction items flashed before his eyes like flowing water. It could be seen that the value and preciousness of each auction item was constantly rising, becoming more and more precious and rare. Finally, on the 3rd day, Lu Tian revealed the first treasure of the day. Wow, the specks of starlight are as dreamy as sand. Could this be the stellar essence that can only be found in the vast starry sky? What a treasure! As long as a little of it is added to any treasure, it can raise its grade by 1 level. It can also draw in the power of the stars. This is a treasure that can't be bought even with spirit stones. There is actually a whole box. The Ling Long Pavilion is indeed very resourceful. As soon as the treasure was revealed, there was a burst of exclamations. It's the stellar essence. I didn't expect the Ling Long Pavilion to have so much. This is good stuff. I'm going to take it. Di Shirtian's eyes flashed, and he said decisively without hesitation. He raised his eyebrows, and a domineering aura rose naturally, as if he did not allow anyone to question him. It was as if the stellar essence had already become his private property the moment he opened his mouth. It is indeed a supreme-grade material for refining, but I'm afraid the price is not cheap. The white fox chuckled as she looked at Sakura, her right hand naturally fiddling with her bangs. A seduction that had long been ingrained in her bones that even the illusory mirage could not conceal was inadvertently revealed through her words and actions as she said, "Sure Tian, I have 2 large spirit veins near Mount Qingqiu. The spirit stones that I have accumulated over the years are also considered abundant. I have 50 million here. If you need them, just ask me." She smiled faintly, revealing an expression that said, "I'll support you no matter what you do." Di Shirtian nodded. This is the stellar essence. It is gathered from the stars, and it takes a lot of effort to condense it. It is extremely precious and is an excellent material for refining weapons. Its grade is mid-immortal grade. The starting price is 30 million, and each bid must not be less than 1 million. There is no limit. Now, please raise the price. Lution's expression was gradually becoming more and more excited. The consecutive days of auctions did not tire him, but instead made him even more excited. He felt a great sense of accomplishment with every item he sold. After he finished speaking, his eyes swept over the VIP rooms above. This was the real start of the auction. The ones before were just appetizers. 35 million. As expected, when the stellar essence was revealed, those seated below in the public area fell silent. They understood that their competition was over. Now, the ones who would be competing would be the big shots from the 1,000 VIP rooms above. The main course was about to be put on the stage. Compared to what they were doing now, they were just small fries. The big shots were still at the back. All right, number 37 bids 35 million. 35 million, is there anyone who wants to go higher? Lution's eyes lit up and he called out loudly. At this moment, there were numbers in front that represented each person's identity. This number was only available in the VIP rooms. A number represented a VIP room. Just now, the first person to bid was in VIP room 37. In that VIP room, Ao Chen, whose face and body carried a towering arrogance, was sitting there. Looking at his appearance, he actually didn't have the appearance of an old man who had a large amount of vitality sucked away by the curse technique Withering Glory. Moreover, he had recovered his original appearance, which could be considered miraculous. His eyes were fixed on the box of stellar essence. He wanted to obtain it so that he could use it to upgrade his natal sword. Number 37, I think I saw Ao Chen go in. Then it should be him. Interesting. Then let me join in the fun. In VIP room number 40, a mischievous, beautiful barefoot which was sitting in a pavilion. She reached out and pinched a ball of spirit light, blinked her eyes, and murmured to herself with a crafty expression. 36 million. Slightly changing her voice, a slightly rough female voice echoed in the auction venue. Number 40 bids 36 million. Is there anyone who wants to go higher? Humph, how dare you compete with me? Ao Chen raised his eyebrows and exuded his arrogance. He coldly snorted and called out a price again. 40 million, my Sky Sword Valley will take this stellar essence. There was a sharp sword intent in his voice, and he did not hesitate to mention the power behind him. He wanted to directly take out a carriage. He unceremoniously expressed, I am the Sky Sword Valley of the 4 great Holy Lands. Who dares to compete with me? Power! This is power. As soon as he said this, the entire auction venue fell silent. Even the gazes that were looking at the VIP room where Ao-Chen was became extremely unusual. It made many people shiver in fear. The incomparable silence made the voice reverberate in the air. Sometimes, in an auction, it was not only about wealth, but also strength and power. These were invisible assets, a strong foundation and a huge deterrent. Now that Ao-Chen directly mentioned the Sky Sword Valley, anyone who wanted to compete with him for the stellar essence would have to think carefully about whether they could withstand the anger of one of the 4 great holy lands. Who knew if they would bring disaster to themselves? If they wanted to compete, they would first have to assess whether they had the ability to do so. The effect was obvious. From the silent scene, it could be seen that the name of the 4 great holy lands had an immeasurable deterrent force. 50 million. A mere holy land is like duckweed to me. You are not qualified to suppress me with a holy land. Di Shirtian coldly snorted and spat out a sentence full of disdain. His tone was as if he had seen a fly that he hated. He casually waved his hand. 4 great holy lands? A glint flashed in Di Shirtian's eyes. Although the holy land was strong, it was simply a dream to suppress everyone. Not to mention that they were not in the Sky Tower. Even if they were, he would not be afraid. Ao-Chen. The moment he opened his mouth, he could already tell that the person was Ao-Chen. There was no one else who could have that kind of arrogance other than him. Give in? Impossible. The so-called 4 great holy lands could not suppress him. This was an auction. They were competing with financial resources. Since he could not fight head-on, he would use spiritual stones to smash him to death. With the source of life in hand, one source of life was equivalent to most treasures. Let's see if you have more spiritual stones or my source of life. I will play with you. I will smash you to death with spiritual stones. Tit for tat, no mercy. How dare you go against me? A cold glint flashed in Ao-Chen's eyes. He instantly looked at Di Shirtian's position. His gaze was so sharp that it seemed to pierce through the barrier of the VIP room. After a long time, he coldly spat out, 60 million, 80 million. Di Shirtian didn't even have a trace of hesitation as he immediately added 2,000. Ao-Chen's eyes were about to spit fire. Sword chi surrounded his body. He was so angry that he wanted to attack. However, he seemed to know where he was. He took a few deep breaths and finally suppressed it. He coldly said, 81 million, 85 million, 88 million. At this moment, the entire auction seemed to have turned into a battlefield between Di Shirtian and Ao-Chen. They were facing each other with equal harshness, and there was a dense smell of gunpowder in the air. They scrambled to be the first to raise the price. As for the people in the other VIP rooms, they seemed to be frightened by the crazy bidding. No one interfered. They were all watching the fierce battle. 99 million. After Ao-Chen made his bid, Di Shirtian immediately called out a new price. He did not give Ao-Chen any time to react. It was a battle of life and death. He did not give Ao-Chen any chance to breathe. 100 million. Just as Di Shirtian expected, Ao-Chen blurted out the number 100 million. Suddenly, the surroundings were silent. Di Shirtian, who was originally at odds with Ao-Chen, was strangely silent. He did not respond to Ao-Chen's words as usual. This made Ao-Chen's fist that he had been accumulating power for a long time seem to hit the air. His enemy did not see it. 100 million? This box of star essence is really expensive. Sky Sword Valley is really rich. I won't fight with you. I'll let you have it, Di Shirtian said calmly. When Ao-Chen heard this, it was like a heavy slap to his face. His face was red. His face was yellow and white. The blood in his chest was boiling, and he was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. He fell into a trap. He had actually forced him to eat the fruit himself. Auchan is really stupid. Although his strength isn't bad, he didn't take a look at where he is. He got hot-headed and fell into someone's trap. Interesting. Who is so bold as to not even put the 4 great holy lands in his eyes? Not only did he go tit for tat, he even directly tricked that guy. 100 million spirit stones to buy a box of star essence? I'm afraid you can buy 2 boxes. Ding Dang chuckled and tapped his lip. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he glanced at VIP room 14 with interest. Although the star essence was precious, its real price should be around 50 to 60 million spirit stones. With 100 million spirit stones, if it was done well, they could even get their hands on 2 boxes. This time, it could be said that Ao Chen had been slapped in the face and suffered a great loss. Di Shirtian, who had already given up, smiled calmly. He was not depressed at all. Instead, he revealed an inexplicable expression. 4 great holy lands, huh? Sooner or later, I'll make you kneel at my feet. I'll remember this for now. As expected, when the star essence was raised to such a high price, no one else was stupid enough to raise the price. In the end, when it landed in Ao Chen's hands, he was given double the price. When he received the star essence, he was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. The auction continued. What followed could be said to be brilliant. After the appearance of the star essence gold, one after another rare treasures appeared one after another. Fierce confrontations took place in each of the VIP rooms. Everyone, please give me 2 days to adjust. It's really too tiring to keep up with the continuous updates. My body can't take it anymore as long as the weather turns cold. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.